Chapter 911. Gu Fei looked through the binoculars and saw a bunch of people coming from the main road. However, they were already close to the main city, and the surroundings were flat. There were no mountains, no water, and no trees. There was no place to hide. After Gu Fei finished looking, he passed the binoculars to Slender Waist Dance. Slender Waist Dance pretended to observe, and then passed it to Sword Demon. Sword Ghost looked at it more carefully, and after looking at it, he wanted to pass it to Imperial Heaven Shenming beside him. Imperial Heaven Shenming turned his head and snorted. "I have eagle eyes." Sword Demon smiled and said to Gu Fei and Slender Waist Dance, "There's no terrain around here. That's easy. We just have to choose 3 directions. Safety first." The two nodded and Gu Fei said, "I'll wait for them in front. I'll attract their attention, and then you guys ambush them from the left and right." "You just want to walk less, right?" Slender Waist Dance glanced at him. "You have the heart of a villain," Gu Fei said sadly. "Then we'll take the left and the right." Slender Waist Dance said to Sword Demon and Yutian Shenming. She then glanced at Gu Fei. "You take the middle." Gu Fei was speechless. Sword Demon and Yutian Shenming laughed and left. The 500 elites from Chi-E City strode towards Gust Wind City. Although the distance between the two cities was relatively close, after walking for more than an hour, 80% of the people were already annoyed. They had to walk through 6 main cities like this, and might have to walk back the same way in the end. No one didn't feel annoyed. 10 Hearts Locke was the instigator of these 500 or so players. He was also one of the 31 important figures from before. He was a knight, and he had died in battle before. Compared to those who had fallen to level 40, he could be considered lucky. At this time, 10-Hearted Locke didn't dare to be high-spirited in the team he had gathered. He could see the conflict in many people's hearts. 10 Hearts Locke was a little worried. They had only just started their journey, and their emotions were already very problematic. Would it be negative to fight with such emotions, or would it be a catharsis? There were many people traveling with them, but 10-Hearted Locke felt that there was no one who could empathize with him. Instead, he felt closer to the other 25 important people who were participating in this operation in other main cities. He had only known them for 2 to 3 days. Along the way, the 10-Hearted Locke maintained contact with the other 25 people. As expected of brothers on the same battlefront, everyone more or less expressed their concern for the team's current emotional problems. A portion of them were worried that it would affect the outcome of the battle. There were also some who were worried that after doing such a strenuous and unrewarding thing, they would be respected by others in the future. Everything had its pros and cons. At this time, the thoughts of the big shots were becoming more and more profound. The team continued to move forward. From time to time, there would be a gust of wind in Gust Wind City, causing the foreigners to curse. Some of them did not give 10 Hearts Locke any face. 10 Hearts Locke did not say anything, so he pretended not to hear anything. Along the way they met many Gust Wind City players. When another figure appeared in front of them, no one paid much attention to it. Everyone continued to curse as they walked. 10 Hearts Locke did not pay much attention to it. His mind was not on the road. While walking with the team, he talked to the big shots of the other main cities in private chat. 10 Hearts, 10 Hearts. A brother beside him suddenly called out. This was a good friend of 10 Hearts Locke who had participated in the previous 2 operations with him. He had also lost a level because of this. Because of this, 10 Hearts Locke was a little embarrassed to face him, especially when he followed them without any hesitation. 10 Hearts Locke felt like he was avoiding the disaster that he had caused. "What's wrong?" 10 Hearts Locke immediately responded when he heard his brother calling out to him. "There's something wrong with that guy." This brother was a marksman, so he was naturally stronger than 10 Hearts Locke's knight. "Which guy?" 10 Hearts Locke did not even look ahead. "That one, standing on the main road." The brother gestured. There was a small figure standing on the main road in the distance. With 10 Hearts Locke's eyesight, this was the situation. "What's wrong?" 10 Hearts Locke asked. "Black Robe Wizard." The brother only said 4 words, but it was enough for 10 Hearts Locke. These 4 words were enough for him to think of another 4 words. "Qianli is drunk." "No way." 10 Hearts Locke was a little surprised. "I think it's very likely," the brother said. During the 2 operations of the big shots, only a small number of people actually came into contact with Gu Fei. However, through the efforts of those who came into contact with him, the terror was already deeply rooted in people's hearts. In everyone's minds, if 100 people saw Qianli drunk, they would have to take a detour, or else they would lose 29 levels. Why 29? That was only because when Qianli was drunk, he was also worried that he would be attacked by the guards when he reached 30. If it wasn't for this restriction, even 100 people would be dead. Who wouldn't be afraid of such power? However, there were 500 people in front of him. 10 Hearts Lock calmed down a little. The 500 of them did not have a unified leader at the moment. Logically speaking, the team was gathered by 10 Hearts Lock. They were here because of him, so there was no problem with him being the leader. However, 10 Hearts Lock's personality was more gentle. He felt that he had troubled everyone and let them down by doing something like this. He was even more embarrassed to be the leader. If he, the rightful person, didn't stand up for them, how could the others do so? Anyway, they were in a hurry right now. It didn't matter if there was such a person, so he temporarily put it aside. In the end, when he found someone suspected to be Qianli drunk, 10 Hearts Lock hurriedly went to find a few of the more powerful people in the team. What? The experts in the team heard 10 Hearts Lock's words and froze. That one. A master archer also raised his eagle eye to take a closer look and confirmed. Blackrobe, wizard, they don't seem to be wrong. However, it's too early to say that Qianli is drunk. I can't even see his face. Yes, I know. I'm just giving everyone a heads up. 10 Hearts Lock said. Is Qianli really that scary when he's drunk? We have 500 experts. Someone said. Scary. 10 Hearts Lock nodded. He didn't play dumb at all. Then let's confirm his identity first. Someone suggested. Do you know anyone who's drunk Qianli? 10 Hearts Lock patted his archer brother. That person nodded, jumped out of the team, and sped forward. Be careful. 10 Hearts Lock added a spiritual blessing to this brother. He was worried that this brother wouldn't return. Don't worry. I just need to see his face clearly. Why would I go so close? The brother wasn't too worried. Archers weren't too worried when facing any profession. If they couldn't win, they could always run. This was the source of their sense of security. Gu Fei was still holding the binoculars in his hands. From time to time he would look forward. Soon he saw someone jump out of the opposing team and run towards him. It was a master archer. Gu Fei thought about it and understood what the other person was thinking. Thus he turned around. Fuck. Although the master archer brother couldn't see the face clearly, he could see the person's movements. The other person actually turned around. This was a very normal movement, but he couldn't see the face. Someone in the 500 people also noticed this phenomenon. That guy has his back turned. The master archer said. He doesn't want people to see his face? Could it really be Qianli's drunk? 10 Hearts Lock said. Wouldn't he think too much if he just turned around? Someone said. Thus, 10 Hearts Lock messaged his brother and told him to confirm the target. The master archer brother started to go in a big circle. If he wanted to see the face from afar, he had to go to the front. Thus, when he turned around, he discovered in grief and indignation that the other person had turned around again. He clearly didn't want him to see the face. He turned around again. Someone in the 500 people shouted. This isn't a coincidence, right? Everyone didn't just see this person turn around. At the same time, they saw him turn around and the detection shooter circling to his front. It really is Qianli's drunk. 10 Hearts Lock decided. How do we deal with him? The others all looked at 10 Hearts Lock. From their perspective, 10 Hearts Lock had experience fighting him. It's 500 people. No matter how strong he is, can he kill all 500 of us? There would never be a lack of people who thought this way. At this moment, there was no lack of such voices. 500 people. 10 Hearts Lock was in pain. 100 people definitely wouldn't be able to take him down. 200 people might be a problem, but what about 500 experts? 10 Hearts Lock was at a loss. He hadn't tried it before, so he didn't know. He didn't dare to guarantee anything. He had no confidence at all. 10 Hearts, everyone is here for this matter. Just say the word and no one will object. A good friend of Ten Hearts Lock said. Okay. Ten Hearts Lock nodded. What I mean is that we should focus on defense. Focus on defense? 500 people against one person? Someone was immediately puzzled. Of course, it was the player who had expressed doubt about the 500 people being worried about Qianli's drunk. Shut up. Listen to Ten Hearts. Someone who was familiar with this person immediately scolded him. Ten Hearts Lock looked at Qianli's drunk in the distance, then looked at the crowd and said, It's true that we have 500 people, but among these 500 people, there aren't even 100 who can keep up with Qianli's speed. In other words, if we want to take the initiative and attack, only the thieves and archers can keep up with Qianli's running. For Qianli's drunk, we have a chance to take them down one by one. I believe everyone has heard about how Qianli's drunk defeated a level 6 guild in the city war, right? Actually, it wasn't that he defeated 1,000 level 6 guild. It was because this guild was careless and took the initiative to chase after Qianli's drunk. The thieves and archers separated from the main team and formed a line. In the end, they were killed by Qianli's drunk. So when dealing with Qianli's drunk, I feel that we should focus on defense. We can't let him mess up our formation. Unless he's completely close to us, we'll maintain our formation. If he only roams 30 meters away and attacks from a distance, we'll continue to attack while continuing forward. Don't take the initiative to attack, and don't try to surround him. Ten Hearts Lock said. Damn, why is it so frustrating? Someone was unhappy. I think this is the best method. Ten Hearts Lock said. Chapter 9:12. Shameless, too shameless. Just as the 500-man team was discussing how to deal with Qianli, the marksman who had come out to scout was confused. Even if his speed was several times faster than Gu Fei's, circling such a large radius would not be faster than Gu Fei turning around on the spot. He was on the verge of vomiting, yet he couldn't even see the side of his opponent. Are you dizzy? Gu Fei even expressed his concern for him. The marksman gritted his teeth and was about to continue turning when he received a message. He opened it and saw that it was Ten Hearts Lock calling him back. There's no need to turn. It's just that Qianli's hiding is too obvious. Ten Hearts Lock's message made him a little depressed. Were the 500 of them so stupid? 1,000 Miles Drunk was hiding so openly in front of them. Wasn't this trying to cover up, making things even more obvious? The marksman quickly returned to the team. The team's plan was set. At this moment, a circle of players with high HP and high HP surrounded the outer circle. They strode towards Gu Fei. Gu Fei didn't turn around anymore. He just stood there and waited. His turning was purely a prank. He purposely didn't let the people who came to confirm his identity see his face clearly. At the same time, he was also practicing his footwork. Gu Fei was very calm. Seeing that the people were getting closer, he pulled out his sword and placed it on the ground. The 500 people were very nervous. Seeing that the people were getting closer, the warriors in the outer circle pulled out their shields and protected the entrance. Step by step, meter by meter, closer and closer. The 500 people stared at the person in front of them and were on guard. What kind of attack would Qianli use when he was drunk? Those who had fought with Gu Fei were worried. Those who hadn't fought with Gu Fei were worried and curious. Those who hadn't fought with Gu Fei and weren't convinced were worried and curious and looking forward to it. Ouch! Fuck! Suddenly, two hurried shouts came from the back of the formation. The difference was that the shouts from the right side stopped after shouting, while the shouts from the left were followed by a series of curses. What happened? At this time, the leaders had all gone to the front to observe Qianli getting drunk. When they heard the sound, they realized that something was wrong, so they hurriedly turned around and asked. There's a thief lying in ambush. The players behind him shouted. Casualties? 2 on the right. The left is fine. The right side of their formation, which was the left side of Gu Fei's group, was where Sword Demon and Yutian Shinming were launching their sneak attack. Sword Demon's equipment was valiant, and he had used the skill Misty Ambush, which was of a higher level. Coupled with Yutian Shinming's support from afar, even a heavy armored warrior would not be able to withstand this attack, and 2 of them were killed on the spot. In comparison, Slim Waist was in an awkward situation. She only relied on her equipment to increase her attack power. Just like Gu Fei, she could not easily one-shot a class with high HP. The other side had the advantage in numbers. After Slim Waist Dance slashed down, she immediately moved stealthily. She wanted to land another hit, but the other side also had 500 elites. How could they give her another chance to land the killing blow? The cleric's white light floated downwards, almost brushing Slim Waist Dance's body. Although it was a little strange that she could not see her opponent after being attacked, the other side had already begun their counterattack. Slim Waist Dance was not an ignorant girl who knew that she could not win, so she immediately retreated as soon as she saw that something was wrong. This attack only caused a disturbance, not any results. As soon as Sword Demon's attack succeeded, he immediately retreated. The outer circle was full of high HP classes, and with the protection of the cleric he did not have the ability to kill one more person. The team that was ambushed immediately stopped moving forward. When the leaders turned around, one side of the assassin and one side of the thief had already fled. The leaders had not yet come to a conclusion when there was a huge commotion in front of the team. In shock, they hurriedly paid attention to the front. It was too scary. Qianli had actually taken a step forward in a drunken stupor. Was he going to make a move? Everyone gripped their weapons tightly. Should we chase? The players at the back were still asking for instructions. The previous order was to not chase Qianli even if he was beaten to death, but this clearly was not the case for the left and right sides. Don't be noisy. The leaders could not care less about the people behind them. Didn't they already run after ambushing? The biggest problem now was in front of them. Qianli was drunk. Gu Fei held onto his sword and looked left and right, feeling quite helpless. His current situation was the same as Slim Waist Dance's. Under the opponent's completely defensive formation, it was useless for him to get close. Just like Slim Waist Dance, he could not kill anyone. Moreover, he might be in an even more difficult situation than Slim Waist Dance. At least Slim Waist Dance could use stealth to sneak up on someone and stab them. But what about him? Gu Fei glanced at the archer mage behind the line of defense. The archer mage's arrowhead was still pointed at him. If he rushed forward, it would be hard to say whether or not he could get past them. How are you guys? Gu Fei had no intention of making a move at this time, and sent a message to his comrades. I killed 2 of them, the sword ghost said. It wasn't difficult. Skills can be repeated after the cooldown is over. Slim Waist Dance did not want to talk at this time. They are very wary of you. Sword Demon had already run to a safe position at this time, and turned around to observe the situation. The opponent had Gu Fei in front, and they were ambushed from behind. 500 people actually did not dare to move. Gu Fei also saw it. If I knew it would be like this, I would have hired a few mages. Just a simple pose would be enough to distract their attention. Sword Demon was not someone who did not know a bit of trickery. Next time, Gu Fei said. It was too late to do this now. What do we do now? Slim Waist Dance asked. She had just missed and was not in a good mood. Let's maintain this method and use my skill cooldown to drag them down, Sword Demon said. This was the only effective damage they could do at the moment. In theory, they could let Sword Demon kill all the people in the outer circle with high HP before Gu Fei and Slim Waist Dance showed off their skills together. What's the cooldown of your skill? Slim Waist Dance asked. 60 seconds. Sword Demon replied. There was no data in the skill description of Misty Ambush. This was all mastered by Sword Demon after using it himself. Once a minute. If we let you kill 2 people at a time like just now, then in an hour it would be 120 people. The opponent's outer defense would probably have been wiped out by you, Slim Waist Dance said. But in reality, you can only kill up to 29 people, Gu Fei said helplessly. Oh, I forgot about this. Sword Demon and the others all came to a realization. This problem was the most sensitive to Gu Fei. Even these veterans had overlooked it, but Gu Fei was the first to think of it. 29 people might not be enough. Gu Fei said. Yeah, if the opponent's professions were evenly matched, there would be around 70 people of each profession. But the average Grandmaster of Combat wouldn't make up that many. And the Paladins might also have less so. Sword Demon analyzed. You guys escaped, and the opponent didn't even chase after you. It looks like it's impossible to mess up their formation, Gu Fei said. Yeah, looking at their formation, it's clear that they're going to defend to the death. They're going to take your attacks head-on and not fight back. They're going to keep going, Sword Demon said. I can't do anything like this, Gu Fei had to admit. The current him was scarier when he didn't attack. If they didn't make a move, they would always be a deterrent. Once they made a move, the other party would realize that their arrangements had rendered 1,000 miles drunk helpless. Naturally, they would feel at ease and boldly continue on their path. It would not be like this, where Gu Fei took a step forward, and the 500 people became extremely nervous. Then next, Qianli will be the main distraction, I'll be the support and Sword Demon, Yutian will be the main attacker. Let's use up the 29 slots first. Slender Waist Dance ordered in the name of the team leader. 29 people. Actually, there's more than that, Yutian Shenming suddenly said. I can share some of the burden, Yutian Shenming said. Can you? Gu Fei and Slender Waist Dance questioned. Damn, who do you guys think I am? I'm also an expert, a great expert, a famous great expert. Yutian Shenming was indignant. Yutian can do it. As long as we seize the opportunity to shoot arrows, in theory, we can have 58 slots, Sword Demon said. Don't worry. Yutian Shenming was full of confidence. Really? Then let's give it a try, Slender Waist Dance said. The four of them were talking about tactics. The 500 people were also talking about tactics. What should they do next? How should they deal with the sneak attack from behind? Was this just a probing attack from the opponent, or was there a large group of people lying in ambush? There were many people on the 500 people's side. The more people there were, the more opinions there would be. Basically, they had just analyzed the situation once, and Sword Demon had already sneaked out again. Misty Ambush's cooldown was 1 minute, and Stealth's cooldown was also able to keep up. Sword Demon was running back and forth, so he was actually quite busy and didn't have much time to rest. Pay more attention to anti-stealth. This was the first order of the 500 people. That's not it. The sword ghost didn't even try to sneak up on them. He suddenly appeared halfway and quickly killed 2 of them, someone argued. That's not right. I think he used stealth when he got close? Someone was puzzled. Did he? Didn't he? As the debate was going on, there was a sudden cry from behind. Fuck. Everyone's hearts tightened. They all knew what was going on. The opponent was here again. Sword Demon wouldn't come close and ambush again. He didn't dare either. If he came close, he would directly rush into the crowd. How would he come out? Sword Demon calculated the distance accurately. He would just rush to the surface and then immediately withdraw. This time it was the same. Sword Demon suddenly appeared halfway in stealth. With the speed of Misty Ambush, it didn't matter if there was stealth or not. The current players simply couldn't react. Seeing Sword Demon appear, everyone cursed. At the same time, Sword Demon was already in front of them. 1-2. Sword Demon counted silently in his heart. Amidst the scolding of the other party, he clearly heard the whistling sound of arrows behind him. Bang bang bang. The sound of the Imperial Heaven God's cry arrow hitting its target was also very loud. He released a total of 3 arrows. The first 2 arrows were double arrows, and the last arrow was a sniper shot. The flying speed was just right. The 3 arrows arrived so fast that they didn't give people a chance to react. Sword Demon's first slash. The first person was hit by an arrow. White light. Sword Demon's second slash. The second person was hit by an arrow. White light. Sword Demon retreated. He looked at the PK points. It was still 2. This time, the 2 points were indeed shared by Yutian Shenming. Yutian Shenming was indeed a master, a great master, a famous great master. Butterfly knot, great master Yutian shoot shoot shoot. Chapter 9:13. Sword Demon gave a thumbs up to the sky as he retreated, praising Yutian Shenming. Although Yutian Shenming had suffered many setbacks, he was still confident in himself. He accepted Sword Demon's praise with a smile. He was more looking forward to Slender Waist Dance seeing this scene and expressing her feelings. Unfortunately, there was no sign of Slender Waist Dance on the endless plains. She was clearly in stealth. Slender Waist Dance didn't show up at all in this attack. It was clear that with Gu Fei's strong intimidation and Sword Demon and Yutian Shenming as the main attackers, Slender Waist Dance's support to restrict his position was dispensable. How could Slender Waist Dance be satisfied with such a position that had no sense of presence? When she saw Sword Demon and Yutian Shenming succeed in stealth, she immediately sent a message saying that she wanted to act together with Sword Demon and the others in the next round. Try to stab as much as you can. Yutian and I will help you, Slender Waist Dance instructed Sword Demon. I think it's better for us to do this. Sword Ghost had a different opinion, and so he said. Slender Waist Dance felt that it made sense, so she didn't raise any more objections and approved Sword Demon's suggestion. The 500 people had a lot of objections. They were extremely wary of Qianli's drunk, but he didn't attack at all. Instead, it was the assassins who managed to sneak up on him twice and killed 4 people in an instant. Shouldn't the focus of defense be on Qianli's drunk? This question immediately caused a lot of controversy. 10 Hearts Lock meant that this was the opponent's strategy. Qianli's drunk wouldn't attack first, and would use the attacks of others to shift their focus of defense. Then, Qianli's drunk would attack their exposed weak points and deal more damage. Thus, shifting their attention now would be losing the big picture because of a small gain. Qianli's drunk would always be the biggest threat. There were many people who opposed the 10-hearted lock, but after a few votes, it was clear that the 10-hearted lock had more supporters. However, in just a short while, Sword Demon's third wave of attack had already arrived. His Misty Strike only had a cooldown of 1 minute. 10 Hearts Lock and the others didn't have the time to hold a meeting at all. As for the assassin's sneak attack, they didn't want to just stand by and watch. However, the anti-stealth players were helpless in this situation because the Sword Demon didn't enter their anti-stealth range at all. He had already revealed himself when he was still a distance away from them. The anti-stealth players couldn't do anything at all. But at the very least, Qianli Drunk didn't need them at all, so the anti-submarine players awkwardly continued their seemingly useless work. Suddenly, a system notification rang out from one of the players' anti-stealth skills. His eyes lit up and he immediately pointed. Over there, it's coming again. Fuck! What the hell are you yelling about? Someone immediately berated. This person hurriedly covered his mouth, knowing that he had been too rash in his excitement. When they found the target, they just had to let everyone know secretly. Yelling was the same as telling the opponent that they had been discovered. This kind of mistake shouldn't have happened to any of the 500 experts. Because everyone thought that the anti-stealth players wouldn't be able to discover him. It was too surprising to suddenly catch one. Attack. Since he had already shouted, even if the opponent hadn't entered the best attack range, he had to attack. The long-range archers and mages attacked wildly in the direction that the anti-stealth player had pointed. As expected, a figure appeared in that position and fled as fast as he could. Who told you to shout so early? They had missed a rare opportunity to kill the opponent just like that. Everyone was filled with regret, and the anti-stealth players who made the mistake were also filled with guilt. They were filled with regret. All of a sudden, curses rang out from behind everyone. Everyone turned around and saw that the assassin who had rushed out was the one with the ultimate skill. Just as everyone had expected, he had revealed himself before entering the anti-stealth range. Then, the moment he used that skill, his speed was so fast that it left everyone in despair. They really couldn't block him. After that, he fired 2 more arrows, and 2 more people died on the spot. Motherfucker. Countless people wanted to smash things. After this person killed 2 more people, he didn't delay at all. He turned around and ran. It wasn't that the mages and archers' attacks didn't miss, but they weren't enough to cause fatal damage. The Greatsword Demon. How can he use such a wretched cooldown style? Someone jumped out and scolded. The so-called cooldown style was to choose to dodge when the skill was on cooldown. Once the skill's cooldown was up, he would immediately jump out and use it. This kind of guerrilla fighting style repeated the previous story over and over again. It was more torturous, and in the eyes of many players, it was an extremely wretched style. The sword demon's image had always been healthy and good. Many people immediately felt that such a famous expert using such a wretched style was really shameless. When the sword demon heard the disdain behind him, he just looked back and didn't care at all. The sword demon also recognized the wretchedness of the cooldown style to a certain extent. But for the sword demon, the word wretched was just a description of this style of play. He wouldn't look at it as a derogatory term. The sword demon never thought that any kind of tactical play was shameful. The cooldown style also required considerable technical support. Positioning, attack timing, and so on also required a lot of technical content. In the midst of the wretched reprimand, the sword demon left indifferently, and the thin waist dance didn't do anything. This was also the plan that the sword demon deployed. The point was actually not to use the thin waist dance to distract the opponent. The point was that the thin waist dance wouldn't appear next to him and attract the opponent's attention. The opponent was obviously equipped with anti-stealth, but the sword demon was experienced and played as a thief. He had a good grasp of everything that was good or bad for a thief. What types of anti-stealth skills were there in the game at the moment? How did it work? What was the range? He was very clear. His attacks were launched outside the anti-stealth range. This was the choice that the sword demon made to guard against anti-stealth. Therefore, the thin waist dance couldn't cooperate with him. No matter how fast she didn't have the explosive power of Misty Strike at this distance, which could instantly kill the opponent. If she continued to use stealth, she would be exposed. Just like before, under the crazy attacks of the mage and archer, she definitely wouldn't have a chance to get close. Therefore, at this moment, the thin waist dance actually had no chance to get close. After the sword demon analyzed the situation, he let the thin waist dance dispel the idea of following them to finish off the last hit. Although a character with a weak sense of existence was very boring, it was better than not existing at all. The thin waist dance retreated, and the sword demon retreated. Under the opponent's increasingly cautious defense, both of them suffered a lot of injuries. The 500 masters weren't fake. They could see that the sword demon wanted to use the cooldown style to kill them, and they could also see the cooldown of this cooldown style. 1 minute, only 1 minute. From now on, they would be attacked like this every minute. They didn't know from which direction the opponent would appear. When they saw the opponent would already be coming at them at a speed that they couldn't defend against. What was even more tragic was that they didn't have much time to study it carefully. The next minute was fast approaching. Are we still going to focus on Qianli's drunk? Someone brought up the old matter from a minute ago. Let's go up and see what happens to him, Ten Heartslock suggested. Everyone agreed, so the team headed straight for Gu Fei. Gu Fei touched his sword. It seemed that the opponent was really fearless this time. It seemed that the deterrence of the sword demon killing 6 people in a row was already greater than him posing here. About 60 meters away, the opponent's archer began to shoot. Gu Fei felt that he couldn't let the opponent really treat him like air, so he didn't retreat but advanced instead. The 500 people were shocked. Was Qianli's drunk finally going to attack? So before they entered the mage's attack range, the mages had already fired thousands of cannons, causing a sea of fire in front of them. They couldn't even move forward. Is it necessary? Gu Fei could only stand still. He saw that his deterrence was still the same. Standing and posing all the time wouldn't work. He had to take 2 steps from time to time. While they were tossing and turning, there were curses and shouts from behind. The sword demon rushed out and killed 2 more people. Everyone was helpless, and they were so angry that they wanted to die. Someone suggested to chase after him, but the only ones who could chase after the sword demon were speed professions. This was in conflict with the policy of never splitting up for Qianli's drunk. So everyone could only continue to stare at him. They were quite dissatisfied with the decision-maker's inability to come up with a solution. Yutian Shenming, who was far away, was the most at ease at this time. The sword demon would greet him before launching an attack, and he just needed to see the opportunity to cooperate. With a godlike teammate like the sword demon, it was also very easy to cooperate with him. The 2 of them PK bit by bit without making a single mistake. They chased after the opponent's advance, killing along the way. Seeing that even Gu Fei couldn't get close, but he could kill everywhere, Yutian Shinming felt very happy. Get ready, Yutian. Another minute of cooldown for the sword demon ended. Got it. Yutian Shinming prepared. Suddenly, the mage's attack area in front of the opponent's formation that Yutian Shinming was facing was set on fire. Yutian Shinming laughed after seeing it. Idiot! How could we not think of this? After saying that, 2 arrows flew out. On the other side, the sword demon flashed out from the other side of the fire, and 2 more lives were taken. The place was flat, and Yutian Shinming didn't know stealth. Naturally, shooting arrows from a distance would not escape the opponent's eyes. Moreover, the opponent had also discovered the cooperation between him and the sword demon. The sword demon's stealth was a killer move that could not be guarded against as soon as he appeared. Therefore, in this round, the opponent obviously wanted to attack from Yutian Shinming's position to determine the sword demon's attack position. Unfortunately, veterans like the sword demon had already considered this point. His and Yutian Shinming's positions would not be so simple. It was simply impossible to capture the sword demon in such a straight line. Wash up one by one and wait to die. Ha 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 ha. After another success, Yutian Shinming was laughing proudly when 2 assassins suddenly appeared behind him. The daggers in their hands were already stabbing toward Yutian Shinming. Butterfly knot. The butterfly skill is currently on cooldown. After writing 3,000 words, the skill will be on cooldown. Cooldown is 24 hours. Chapter 9:14. Although Yutian Shinming had quick reflexes, he didn't have Gu Fei's senses, nor did he have any anti-stealth skills. Naturally, he didn't know that the assassin had sneaked up behind him. Any one of these 500 players was an expert. The 2 of them had sneaked up on him without making a sound. As soon as they appeared, they used their killer moves. Just as they were about to succeed, Yutian Shinming's body was suddenly sent flying. The way he flew wasn't elegant at all. He staggered and almost tripped over himself. The 2 assassins were shocked. Even Yutian Shinming himself was shocked. He hurriedly turned his head, but immediately discovered that the 2 assassins had revealed themselves. The 2 assassins were about to give chase when the one on the right suddenly felt a pain in his waist. His HP had dropped by a large chunk. He knew that he had been attacked, but when he turned his head, he didn't see anyone. An attack skill while in stealth. Experts naturally had good judgment. This time he didn't panic. He knew that the other person was right next to him. Although he couldn't see, the dagger in his hand had already been swung out in a wide arc. At the same time, he shouted to the other assassin beside him. There's someone else. At this moment, Yutian Shinming knew that he had been pushed away. His life had been saved. He steadied himself, quickly put some distance between them, knocked his bow, and shot. Obviously, only these 2 assassins had come. In a situation where stealth allowed them to get close, one of them was enough. Both of them could be considered as double insurance. However, the person who was also in stealth next to Yutian Shinming had clearly destroyed their wishful thinking. The assassin swung his sword to the right and immediately shouted in surprise, I hit him. What a fuss. If you hit him, then you hit him. A disdainful voice came from the air. When Yutian Shinming heard this, he became even more excited. He shouted, Big Sister Slender, and had already released an arrow. Slender Waist Dance cancelled her stealth and revealed herself. She didn't hesitate to stab him again. The assassin was stabbed in the right again. He hurriedly counterattacked, hoping to force Slender Waist Dance to take a breather. However, Slender Waist Dance did not retreat at all. She just stabbed again. Only then did Assassin Right realize that this person wasn't planning on playing with him at all. He wanted to fight with him with his saber. What was the point of a saber fight? It was a competition of courage and equipment. In any case, it was not a competition of technique. She was such a pretty girl, yet she used such a direct method of fighting. At any other time, Assassin Yu would never admit defeat. But now was different, because he knew who this beauty before him was. Slender Waist Dance was Qianli's old friend. If there was a female thief in red, it would be her. In the intelligence report on Qianli's drunkenness, this was a very important point. Therefore, everyone already knew who this female thief was. Competing in equipment with the game's top-paid warrior? This idea was really too stupid. That was why when the assassin Righty saw Slim-Waist Dancer and recognized her, he immediately retreated. He decided to teach the beauty a lesson with his techniques. Thus he quickly died. This was because Slender-Waist Dance's technique wasn't weak. In terms of equipment, she had an absolute advantage. She had never been afraid of anyone of the same class. If the assassin you wanted to play with technique, Slender-Waist Dance would accompany him. Thus, in a few moves he lost his technique. The assassin you didn't want to just watch, but Yu Tianxinming's expert abilities had awakened. Especially with a beauty in front of him, his performance was even better. In comparison, Yu Tianxinming had an overall advantage in terms of equipment and technique. There was no reason for the assassin you not to lose. In the end, he displayed his accurate judgment again. He realized that he was 100% no match for her, so he wanted to run. Unfortunately, no matter how fast he was, he couldn't compare to the speed of a sharpshooter's arrows. Yu Tianxinming didn't hold back and the person could only fly away in a flash of white light. Fuck. The two assassins missed. 10 Hearts Lock couldn't help but curse. How could a veteran like Sword Demon not think of such a simple trick? Thus, he instructed Slender-Waist Dance to pay attention to Yu Tianxinming's side and give her protection. Splitting up into 3 groups to harass him was only the initial tactical plan. As the situation developed, of course, there had to be adjustments. At this time, Slender-Waist Dance and Sword Demon Yu Tianxinming had completely met up, and Gu Fei had actually started to move towards them. Wherever Gu Fei passed, arrows fell like rain, and the flames were higher than him. One Sword Demon had already tormented 500 people, until they were at their wits' end. They really didn't dare to let Qianli have a chance to get close to them when he was drunk. Gu Fei wandered left and right. 500 people advanced, staring at Gu Fei. They blocked him out of the area as they advanced. The interception of Gu Fei was undoubtedly successful. After facing Qianli for so long, it was a miracle that this guy didn't take away any PK points. But in comparison, Sword Demon's side made them almost explode. Everyone had seen Misty Shadow's ambush over and over again, but what could they do? The speed was too fast and they really couldn't react. They had tried all the methods they could think of, but the opponent's ultimate skill was still on cooldown. It came once a minute and took away 2 PK points each time. At this time, the army's advance was seriously slowed down. It would take at least half an hour to enter the city from here, and entering the city wasn't absolutely safe either. At least they had to walk to the resurrection point, which would take another 10 minutes. At this rate, by the time everyone reached the resurrection point and was safe, more than 100 people would die. They had just set off from their hometown. If they continued advancing like this, they wouldn't be able to reach Cloud City at all. Although they also thought that the opponent would have to clean up after getting 29 PK points, they could clean up and come back after that. They still had a long way to go. If they cleaned up and killed him, it would be enough to wear down their 500 people. Wretched, shameless, shameless, all the words that could be cursed were cursed. But Sword Demon was worthy of being called an old demon in the online gaming world. He wasn't moved at all. Someone almost shouted, "If you have the guts, let's fight face to face," but was held down by someone. Wasn't this asking for death? Not to mention drunk Qianli and Sword Demon. Even if Thin Waist Dance and Yu Tianxinming came up, none of them dared to say that they had the confidence to win. 10 Hearts Lock and the others couldn't call for help. They could only be hunted by Sword Demon all the way to the main city. In the meantime, they were afraid that Qianli would attack them when he was drunk, so they had to pay attention to his movements. Gu Fei walked left and right, and they didn't know how many arrows and mana the opponent had used. A mage's mana wasn't limitless, so everyone could only take turns using it. This caused them to be unable to continuously blast out a magic isolation area to prevent Sword Demon from getting close. Sword Demon even bullied them through the gaps. Gu Fei also accepted his fate this time. It seemed that he couldn't be the main character in this battle for now. He was just a scarecrow bluffing. Sword Demon was the main force, and Yu Tianxinming was the first assistant. This situation lasted for more than 10 minutes. Before 10 Hearts Lock and the others could come up with anything, Sword Demon and Yu Tianxinming's PK points had already reached 28. This was already the highest record for the two of them, and they were a little nervous. The formation of 500 people was now badly damaged. The 56 people who were sacrificed were almost all warriors, and the solid barrier surrounding their team was already full of holes. Motherfucker, what do you mean by defense? We're being played like this. Some people started to question their general strategy. In this kind of situation where everything wasn't going well, conflicts would always erupt. Then what do you think we should do? Ten Hearts Locke was also annoyed. He was the one who came up with the strategy, but there was no other way. As expected, no one could answer this question. They had seen Sword Demon's ultimate move more than 10 times. Even their eyes couldn't keep up with the speed, let alone the movement. Sword Demon never stepped into the detection range of their anti-submarine scouts, so they didn't know every time he appeared. Ten Hearts Locke thought of letting the anti-submarine rogues sneak to a farther place to scout, but they were quickly dug out by Qianli, who was wandering around randomly. Only then did everyone realize that Qianli's anti-submarine skills were said to be quite accurate. They were lucky to be discovered by Qianli, and they all escaped in the end. Wherever Qianli went, the archer's firepower would follow. It was already not bad that the anti-submarine soldiers didn't die under their own people's arrows and spells. They really used up all their methods again and again, until the other party stopped. Ten Hearts Locke calculated that their dead people pushed up the other party's PK points. This time, the other party really had to rest for a while. As expected, Sword Demon and Yutian Shenming disappeared just like that, but Qianli was still there. He continued to follow them unhurriedly, causing them to continue to be tense. They continued to shoot arrows and cannons to obstruct Qianli, who was planning to get close to them. Ten Hearts Locke kept urging the team to speed up. He had no way to deal with Sword Demon's cooldown. He only hoped that before those two guys returned, they could walk a bit more and run to a safe place in the city to take a breather. At this time, Gu Fei and the others were also in a group meeting. How is it? Do we continue to chase these people? Sword Demon asked. Why not? It wasn't easy to create an opening. If we put in a bit more effort, we'll be able to eliminate them. Gu Fei's ambition was not small. He clearly wanted to kill all 500 people. Yutian and I can't clear our PK points as fast as you. By the time we're done, they might have already entered the city. If they're smart, they'll probably run to the revival point and temporarily go offline to hide. We can't continue to wait for them here, right? Makes sense. Gu Fei nodded. Why don't we wait for Yutian and I to finish clearing our PK points? Then we'll change to a main city. There might be a group that just arrived there. We won't have to rush too far to chase them, Sword Demon said. And then repeat the story? Gu Fei asked. Yes, Sword Demon said. I don't want to be a scarecrow anymore. Gu Fei rarely felt depressed. This tactic really won't work without you, Sword Demon said. If it wasn't for Gu Fei's existence attracting a lot of the opponent's firepower, and the opponent's mage and archer only focused on guarding against Sword Demon's random attacks, Sword Demon's cooldown might not have been so smooth. Chapter 9:15. This day has finally come for us. Yutian Shenming was filled with emotion as he walked into the Gus City Bounty office. The two of them had a bumpy journey. Although their PK value had yet to reach 30, if they were discovered by the patrolling guards or sentries, they would be attacked. Not only would they be imprisoned, they would also lose 2 levels. Hence, the two of them didn't dare to be careless and proceeded cautiously. Their overall speed wasn't much faster than the army. Stepping into the mission office, Yutian Shenming finally let out a long sigh. Be careful. The two of them each received a mission and reminded each other. Bounty missions were high-risk missions. No one would give up just because they were doing it. If they were careless and failed to complete the bounty, they would suffer huge losses. Then Sword Demon patted his Wind Chaser coat of arms and disappeared. The Wind Chaser coat of arms was a tradable item, so he ended up borrowing Gu Fei's coat of arms to use. On the other hand, Yutian Shenming borrowed Gu Fei's coat of arms. He sent Gu Fei's coordinates and set off immediately. The 500-strong army finally got rid of the shadow of Qianli's drunkenness, but when they saw him speeding towards the main city, they couldn't help but feel uneasy. 10 hearts. Could they have entered the city to set up a trap for us? Someone asked 10 Hearts. These people are despicable and cunning. It's not impossible. 10 Hearts frowned. It was time for him to make a decision again. But we can't just leave the city, someone said. We need to replenish our supplies. The sorcerers and archers all expressed their opinions. In the beginning, they didn't think that they would have to expend so much energy on this journey. 1,000 miles drunk followed them like a wolf, causing them to constantly attack. The archers used up group after group of arrows, and the mages ate so many fruits that they wanted to vomit. Many of them spat out the fruits that they ate and threw them away. Along the way, they threw fruit peels all over the ground. Should we enter from another door? Someone suggested. 10 Hearts couldn't come to a conclusion. Where's Slim Waist Dance? Someone suddenly asked. They had seen the sword demon leave, Yutian Shenming leave, and Qianli leave after getting drunk. But what about the skinny waist dance? Although she wasn't as conspicuous as the other three, no one knew where she was right now. Is he still following us? Said one. Mage Archer. 10 Hearts Lock shouted. The mages and archers immediately launched a 360-degree AoE attack. This time no one held back. The circle of attacks was like a beautiful flower blooming. However, that red figure did not appear. At least she's not within our attack range. 10 Hearts Lock could only come to this conclusion. Just 4 people can do this to him? Someone looked at each other in dismay. There were quite a few experts in this formation. They represented the elite forces of their main cities. Yet they had been completely helpless against 4 people. It was hard to believe that this would happen. That's the truth. The 10 Hearts Lock sighed. Then what should we do? Someone returned to the original topic. If they come again, we'll go to the revival point and log off. If they don't, I think they're going to harass the other teams. 10 Hearts Lock said. Silence. This was a matter of friends dying rather than me dying. It wasn't something that could be discussed openly. They could only hope for it in silence. As for whether they would be ambushed after entering the city, they had to be careful. After much consideration, 10 Hearts Lock decided to send someone to scout ahead. The scouts took off their precious equipment and turned back into civilians. They all had a solemn expression on their faces. The farewell ceremony was extremely tragic. Just like that, they entered Gus Wind City first. There's no ambush. We didn't see Qianli and the others. The news from the scouting team made everyone excited. However, they couldn't show it on their faces. If they weren't here, they must have gone somewhere else to wreak havoc. From this perspective, it wasn't good to smile. 10 Hearts Lock led everyone into the city and continued to be careful. I don't think they've left. Someone suddenly said. What do you think? Cleaning up their PK points will take time. I don't think they've cleaned up after such a short while. If they wait for them to clean up and catch up from behind, then The person had a tragic expression on his face. What do you think? 10 Hearts Lock asked. Let's go offline and rest for a while, the person suggested. That's a good idea. 10 Hearts Lock nodded. The others who could speak also expressed that they had no objections. It was better to be cautious. Hence, everyone changed their route to the resurrection point. Under the situation where they did not encounter any ambushes or harassment, they went offline to rest because they were too suspicious. We'll come back later. Qianli will definitely be gone once he's drunk. They were players from the same city and knew each other. They didn't need to inform each other beforehand to communicate offline. Yeah, 10 Hearts Lock replied. He wasn't excited about this. If Qianli wasn't here, where could he go? He couldn't possibly go offline to rest too, right? Sigh. 10 Hearts Lock sighed. Another team's tragedy began. There was nothing new in the story. In a new city, a new team was targeted by Gu Fei's group of 4. Gu Fei attracted their attention, causing them to tremble and be cautious. Sword Demon and Yutian Shenming continued to cooperate and kill. Slender Waist Dance ambushed Yutian Shenming and killed those who tried to ambush Yutian Shenming. They were at their wits' end and wanted to cry but had no tears. They wanted to learn from 10 Hearts Lock's team that had been ambushed before, but they realized that none of them were online. This 500-man team had just reached their second stop and was on their way to their third stop. It would take them more than 3 hours to get there. Based on the enemy's efficiency of killing 2 people per minute, 3 hours was just enough to kill them all. They had used all the methods that 10 Hearts Lock had used. They had also tried all the methods that 10 Hearts Lock hadn't used, but they were all useless. Seeing the 50 or so warriors fall, Qianli waved his Night Stream sword as if he was waiting for them to lose their defense and rush in to kill them all. The 500-man team retreated. They didn't dare to continue forward. The team turned around and returned to the main city. They went straight to the revival point and went offline. The remaining teams all received the news, but they didn't want to be wiped out just like that. They hurriedly discussed countermeasures and discussed how to deal with the enemy's shameless cooldown skill. On Cloud City's side, Brother Yu and the others also heard about the 4-man team's arrogant and despotic achievements and expressed their condolences. They also discussed the possibility of wiping out the enemy on the road. In the end, they were looked down upon by Han family young master. Then how do you think they should deal with it? Brother Yu was one of the more resistant people towards Han family young master's disdain. Spread out and let the 4 of them go to hell. Han family young master said. Brother Yu was startled. He felt that he deserved to be looked down upon. This method wasn't smart at all. He actually didn't realize it. Brother Yu being careless and not noticing it was understandable, but there were tens of thousands of people in an army. If they all didn't think of this, then it wouldn't make sense. In the end, they used this simple method. 500 people spread out. It was just a matter of traveling, and there was no danger along the way. When the various teams saw that 500 players had become targets instead, they made prompt decisions and carried forward the idea of splitting up. The map was filled with players leveling, doing quests, and PK. Once the 500 people spread out, they immediately fell into a sea of people. Gu Fei and the others didn't even know anyone, so how would they be able to find them? The 4 of them were originally rushing towards their 3rd target. Halfway through, they received news that the enemy had already used this method. When they ran out of the main city, they didn't see a group of 500 people in the vast leveling area. They asked the players on the side of the road, but they all shook their heads. The large team had completely broken up. They really run fast. Yutian Shenming was unwilling. It was a rare opportunity to show off his skills, but it ended just like that. Since these people thought of this method, they probably wouldn't gather again until they reached their destination. Sword Demon was also helpless. Gu Fei and Slender Waist Dance let out a long sigh of relief. This business trip was really depressing. They didn't have many opportunities to fight. They could only bare their fangs and brandish their claws to scare people. Slender Waist Dance was fine. She had more or less killed people, but Gu Fei was just posing. After doing it twice, he had long since gotten sick of it. No more, no more. Retreat. Slender Waist Dance gave the order to retreat. Sigh, sigh, sigh. Yutian Shenming was full of regret. With that, the harassment from the 4 of them came to an end. At that moment, a few posts quickly appeared on the forum, expressing their disdain for Sword Ghost's cooldown playstyle. Obviously, it was the 1,000 people who were forced to go offline. They didn't dare to go online, so they could only vent their frustration on the forums. In the end, someone accidentally spilled the beans and said that they had 500 people. Instantly, there was an uproar. One person could cause 500 people to be like this. Whether it was wretched, dirty, or shameless, it was all great. A bunch of people couldn't let Sword Demon be despised. Instead, they put shit on their own heads. Then they told others about how the other party's harassment skills were powerful, and how terrifying Qianli was when he was drunk. Who would care? The Sword Ghost, a name that had always been extremely famous in the past, but had never really shown its true strength in the parallel world, had finally become famous. There were even players who wrote exaggerated posts like the Return of the King. There were even people who started discussing whether the Sword Ghost could take on 500 people, or 1,000 miles drunk could take on 1,000 people. Who was stronger? Sword Demon, you're famous. Brother Yu immediately congratulated Sword Demon after he returned to the main city. Famous for what? Sword Demon was still at a loss. Who would be like Brother Yu, who often went up and down to read the forums when playing games? After Brother Yu described the general things on the forums, Sword Demon finally understood. What about me? What about me? Yu Tianxinming's eyes widened at the side. You. I don't think I saw your name. Brother, you recalled. Qianli mentioned a little. Slender Waist Dance was also there. Yu Tianxinming was very depressed. Such a big show. He was considered a second male lead. Why wasn't his name on the cast list? Chapter 9:16. To be able to do this, it seems like there are a lot of idiots in this world. Han family young master's congratulations were in the form of disdain. Naturally, he was mocking the 1,000 people who were forced to go offline. From his point of view, if they immediately split up when faced with such an attack, they would only suffer a small number of casualties. But now they actually caused 2 teams to go offline and hide. These people were really stupid. Since they were looking down on their opponents, everyone was happy to stand on the same side as Han family young master. No one was stupid enough to defend the enemy and ask for contempt. Is there any new information? Sword Demon asked Han family young master. Their people have all split up. Although their destination is clear, it's hard to track them down. Han family young master said. Then we can only wait here for them to come? Sword Demon asked. From the looks of it, that's the case. Han family young master nodded. Do you have a list of people? Gu Fei asked Brother Yu. Brother Yu was startled. Yes, but take it out if you have it. Slender Waist Dance was even more energetic than Gu Fei. Are you going to teleport to catch people again? Brother Yu's words were filled with complicated emotions. First, he felt sad for the people who were about to be caught. Second, he felt sorry for Gu Fei and the others who had scrolls flying around. Brother Yu felt sorry for them. Although they had already become rich, teleportation scrolls weren't cheap. Every time they were used, there would be one less scroll. Then it would be like throwing money down the drain. Time and time again, these people had never considered the problem from an economic point of view. Brother Yu deeply admired them. I don't have many teleportation scrolls left. Gu Fei looked around. Do you even need to worry about that? Slender Waist Dance said in disdain. The power of the strongest money warrior was immediately revealed. He wasn't afraid of spending money, but he had to spend it happily and willingly. Those who spent money without any reason were either rich or stupid. Just tell me where you want the scrolls. We have ready-made ones. You can just go to the mailbox and get them. Han family young master said. Oh, I've already contacted them, said the Han family young master. Everyone deeply felt that having a studio as an ally was actually quite powerful. The information and supplies provided by a workshop were not something ordinary player teams could provide. Although the supplies were not free, it was much more convenient. Just like now, the Han family young master had asked Yun Teng's side to prepare the teleportation scrolls for the enemy's journey to the main city, just in case. At this time, Brother Yu also flipped through a large number of materials that he had sorted out. This is the list of experts from the main cities who have made a move this time. We don't know who the enemies are yet, but Qianli, you can easily tell by looking at the coordinates after you receive the quest. So much time has passed. All of our opponents are definitely not in the original main city. Good, very good. Gu Fei took the list and immediately took out his wanted license. The surroundings were silent. I don't think there are too many people with PK points, said Brother Yu. Even if the enemy had PK points, they would have been on the road for 3 to 5 hours. People with 1 or 2 PK points would have been automatically eliminated, unless they had a lot of PK points or killed people on the road. Brother Yu felt that there shouldn't be many people like this. As expected, Gu Fei searched along the way and found that everyone had clean backgrounds. Slender Waist Dance was even more anxious than Gu Fei, asking every 5 seconds on average. There's one. Gu Fei finally found one, and reported the coordinates. Brother Yu checked and shook his head. No. Stupid. Slender Waist Dance said. What does this have to do with me? Gu Fei was speechless and continued to search while saying, Brother Yu, isn't this a little too few? There are over 500 people. Why are there only 20 or 30 on this page? The list on Brother Yu's page indicated that they were from a main city. Brother Yu was helpless. The ones I got are the more famous ones. If you want more, you'll need time. Can Yun Teng get more detailed information? Gu Fei asked Han Family Young Master. Han Family Young Master shook his head. The 26 cities were all elite players, and these elite players obviously weren't employees of the studio. Even if they had dealings with the studio and sometimes acted as mercenaries, it wasn't good for a semi-professional studio to directly ask for information. Now that they're all scattered, it won't be easy for the studio to figure out their whereabouts. We can only make our own judgment based on the distance between the main cities. Han Family Young Master said. I've researched all of this, take a look. Brother Yu provided another set of information. When fighting on the front lines, Brother Yu was never idle. This set of information detailed the route players would take to get to Cloud City, as well as the distance between the two cities. This set of information was taken by Sword Demon to research, but Gu Fei didn't have time to care about it. Under Slender Waist Dance's urging, he desperately used the wanted license. Good. This one definitely is. Gu Fei's eyes lit up. Based on the previous one, Gu Fei could determine that the one far away from Qianli was definitely coming for them. Let's go. Slender Waist Dance immediately shouted. Wait for me to finish searching for the others. Gu Fei said. Where's the scroll? Slender Waist Dance asked Han Family Young Master. Go get it from the mailbox, I'll have them send it to you. What are the coordinates? Han Family Young Master's last question was for Gu Fei. It was obvious that he wanted to find the closest teleport. Gu Fei gave the coordinates and was immediately pulled out by Slender Waist Dance. We'll search you while we go. What about us? Yutian Shenming pulled Sword Demon and asked. Let's go. There's still 2 spots left, don't waste them. Slender Waist Dance called out. Let's go. Yutian Shenming vowed to put his name on the list of players. The 4 of them set off again. Brother Yu's heart ached as he watched from behind. If they only found one name on that page, why would they spend a few thousand gold to buy a teleport scroll for that person? Brother Yu felt that spending 1,000 gold would be enough to buy a mercenary group to rip this guy off. Unfortunately, Slender Waist Dance and Qianli might not be willing to use such a cheap method. This was what people wanted. The 4 of them moved quickly and soon arrived at the mailbox. Han Family Young Master's teleport scroll had already arrived. Gu Fei was reflecting on himself. I was stupid before. We should have been like this when they split up. Why did we have to fly back? Can't you hurry up? Slender Waist Dance had already used the scroll. What's the rush? Gu Fei calmly walked into the teleport. What are you dilly-dallying for? Once we finish this, everyone else's PK will be gone. When Slender Waist Dance said this, the 4 of them had already finished teleporting. Coordinates XXX. Gu Fei reported the coordinates and Sword Demon led the way. Sword Demon was the most familiar with the coordinates. He changed the coordinates according to the coordinates provided by Gu Fei. The team moved quickly. Gu Fei did not stay idle along the way. As he ran, he searched through Brother Yu's huge list. In the end, it was rather boring. There were even 4 places that did not have a single target. The other places had at least 1 target, and at most 3 targets. We're close. After Gu Fei finished searching, they were finally close to the target. It took them more than half an hour to get there. There was no other way. The scrolls they got were only up to this level. The studio couldn't be filled with people, and everyone had scrolls with them. Even if they could do that, they still had to send the scrolls with the coordinates. In short, it took time to go back and forth, and it was impossible to do it perfectly. That's right, it's him. The quest was with Gu Fei. He was the only one who could see the quest serial number. Not bad. If it's always like this, we won't have come for nothing. Slender Waist Dance was happy. The reason was that the other party wasn't alone. There were about 12 or 13 people in this team. Clearly, the other party's team of 500 didn't need to split into 500 people. Everyone in a small team wouldn't attract too much attention. They also wouldn't be lonely if they had companions. Let's go. The 4 of them rushed forward. On the way, Sword Demon was still instructing them. In this situation, everyone's PK points should be split evenly. Don't fight over it. The other 3 understood what Sword Demon meant. If someone was too outstanding and killed 10 people, then they would have to clear the PK points after 3 kills. If everyone's PK points were split evenly, the 4 of them would have more than 100 spots to kill. They could use it for a long time. I'm talking to you. Be careful. Slenderwaist Dance added for Sword Demon, and emphasized on Gu Fei. When she partnered with this guy, he always killed most of them. Slenderwaist Dance had always been upset about this. Got it. Gu Fei was helpless. Those who could be on Brother Yu's list were famous in the main city, big or small. At this moment, this team of 11 was led by this famous target. Traveling was very lonely. The 11 people were chatting and laughing to pass the time. When they saw the 4 people rushing toward them, they didn't pay much attention at first. On this road in the leveling area, there were many players running to and fro, so it wasn't unusual. But as they got closer, they gradually felt that something was wrong. Among the 4, there was a person in a black robe. He was probably a mage or priest. There was only one class that could run so fast in the game. Qianli drunk. The 11 people suddenly began to look at each other. Looking closely, to the left and right of the black-robed mage, there was a red-clothed female thief, a black-clothed assassin, and an archer. Wasn't this the team that had attacked them before? The 11 people lost their fighting spirit at the time. This was a team that had forced 500 people offline. How could they still have the confidence to fight? The thief and archer in the team all wanted to run, but the warrior, mage, and priest in the same team didn't say anything. They also felt bad. They hoped that someone in the team would have the awareness to shout, "Run if you can run." But what they got was, "We can't run. We have to fight." The thief and archer had tears streaming down their cheeks. But those who could walk together at this time were all good friends who usually called each other brothers. They really couldn't bring themselves to run away alone. Fine, if I die, then I die. The thief and archer wiped away their tears and followed their short-legged brothers to their deaths. Chapter 9:17. Although the 11 of them were all big shots in the main city, in front of Gu Fei's Sword Demon and Slenderwaist Dance, it was like the difference between a superstar and an ordinary celebrity. The 11 of them tried to spread out their formation, as if they were fighting an enemy, but Sword Demon's Misty Shadow ambush knocked down one side of their formation. Then, Gu Fei teleported and jumped directly into the middle of their formation. He turned around and used double flame flash without any blind spots. None of them ran away. Then Slenderwaist Dance also rushed up, stabbing people while disappearing. They couldn't find her even if they wanted to fight back. The 11 of them were in a mess, but the most anxious one was Yutian Shenming. He wanted to steal the limelight. He wanted to be the main character. He wanted people to remember him. But how could he steal the limelight from these 3 people? He didn't have any kung fu skills, nor did he have any cross-level equipment, nor did he have any cross-level skills. What was even more depressing was that the other party was already right in front of him, while he, an archer, had to shoot arrows from afar. Yutian Shenming was already regretting it. He shouldn't have been in the same group as these 3 people. In comparison, there wasn't much difference between him and those guys who had been slaughtered until their teeth were scattered all over the ground. Yutian Shenming didn't want to be ignored like this. He wanted people to know his existence, so he rushed forward and shouted, "Qianli, the 2 on the left, don't let them escape. Sword Demon, come back and stop them. Sister Slender, where are you? Be careful of my arrows." The 3 people who were called looked back at Yutian Shenming in a daze, not knowing what he was yelling about. In the end, Yutian Shenming shouted even more energetically, "Why are you distracted during a battle? Hurry up, there are still many things waiting for us. Hurry, hurry, hurry." Yutian Shenming finally succeeded. He saw that the remaining survivors were looking at him with surprise, admiration, and awe. A person who could order these 3 people around was definitely not a simple person. Even though he looked like a little kid, Gu Fei and the other 2 could not be bothered to bicker with Imperial Sky Divine Ming over this. After fighting for 10 seconds, the other side had already collapsed, their fighting spirit directly in the negatives. Everyone did not care, randomly looking for a direction to run. Whether it was speed or not, they could not be bothered to think about it at this moment. Thus, Yutian Shenming had another chance to perform. He immediately pointed to the east and west and ordered the 3 of them to chase after him. Although his main purpose was to show off, the arrangement he made was not bad. It was indeed the most suitable plan to pursue. However, it was as if the three of them had made an agreement. They deliberately did not use this most efficient arrangement. Sword Demon went to Gu Fei's route. Gu Fei chased after Slender Waist Dance's original direction, and Slender Waist Dance went to replace Sword Demon's position. The pitiful fleeing players heard Yu Tianxinming's shouts and wanted to come up with a targeted strategy. In the end, they found that the real situation was completely different from what they had heard. Those who thought that they would encounter Sword Demon saw Slender Waist Dance, and those who thought that Slender Waist Dance would appear were Gu Fei. White lights bloomed one after another. In the end, none of the 11 players managed to escape. They were all killed. After completing the chase, the three returned with their weapons and looked meaningfully at Yu Tianxinming. Yu Tianxinming was already full of smiles. He came up and said, "You've worked hard, 3 bosses. You're a good commander. Who would block your arrows?" Slender Waist Dance came up and pinched Yu Tianxinming's face. "Ah, sister she. I was just yelling for fun. You guys were so strong, I had nothing better to do." Yu Tianxinming's face was about to be pinched by Slender Waist Dance as he hurriedly explained. "We agreed to split the PK points equally. Why didn't you shoot more arrows?" Sword Demon asked. Yu Tianxinming came back to his senses. He was so focused on showing off his commanding skills that he didn't even notice the opportunity that Sword Demon had left for him to shoot more arrows. "Can't you pay more attention?" Slender Waist Dance continued to exert force. I know, I understand." Yu Tianxinming hurriedly expressed his stance. "Have you confirmed the remaining targets?" Slender Waist Dance let go and turned to ask Gu Fei. "Yes, I've also told Gongzi to get the scrolls." Gu Fei said, "Okay." Slender Waist Dance nodded and immediately activated another teleportation scroll. "Where are we going?" The three were a bit confused, but they still hurriedly walked into the teleportation circle. A white light flashed, and the destination after teleportation was surprisingly next to the mailbox in the main city. "How can we waste time on this?" Slender Waist Dance was proud of herself, and was very satisfied with her meticulous thinking. "Hurry and look at the mailbox," Gu Fei said. Slender Waist Dance opened the mailbox and looked. The Han family young master's efficiency was indeed satisfactory. A bunch of teleportation scrolls had already been sent over. "Sword Demon, you choose." Slender Waist Dance stuffed the scrolls into Sword Demon's hands. Sword Demon's judgment of the coordinates was still the best. Thus, while Gu Fei reported the coordinates of the current target, Sword Demon filtered out the scrolls, chose the closest one, and immediately used it. The 11 people who died and returned to their hometown wanted to cry but had no tears. The leader was naturally even more tragic. He who had PK points dropped 2 levels in one go. In addition to being depressed, he also had to inform the others of this bad news, and let them be careful. As soon as the news was released, everyone naturally felt insecure. At this time, everyone had already scattered and hurried on their way. Most of them were like the team that had just been sacrificed, a standard team of about 10 people. Naturally, they couldn't resist the attacks of Qianli's group of perverts. For a moment, everyone was in a state of panic. When they saw 4 people on the road, they were a little distracted. Many people began to change their routes, taking the more complicated routes. However, these experienced higher-ups knew exactly how 1,000 miles drunk, and the others had come knocking on their door. PK points. People with PK points. Qianli would know their coordinates when he was drunk. But the problem was that knowing the coordinates wasn't enough. He also needed to know the people's names, so they weren't too wary of this trick. He didn't expect it to be so heaven-defying. Brother Yu, this great god, came to the fray and directly summarized all the famous experts in each city. Then he handed them over to Gu Fei to investigate. This method was a bit stupid, but it was effective. These experienced people couldn't figure out how Gu Fei and the others got the names. In short, the players with PK points were scared. What was worse was that there was no place to hide. Now everyone was hurrying on their way in the wilderness. If they wanted to go offline, they had to go to the main city. High-level goods like teleportation scrolls were impossible for everyone to have. At this time, players with PK points were asking if there were teleportation scrolls in the group chat. This was a life-saving item. 2 levels of life. In the end, there really were people who escaped using this method. Gu Fei had been paying attention to the changes in coordinates on the mission. Suddenly, there was a large change, and he immediately knew that it was teleportation. Gu Fei told the 3 people while wondering, "What's the use of teleportation? We're teleporting to chase after them." "I don't know." The 3 people didn't understand the meaning of this teleportation. So Gu Fei told the Han family young master the new coordinates, and prepared to let Han family young master get the scrolls. In the end, it was Han family young master who thought carefully. Is there a need? Are they going to go back to the city to hide and go offline? Gu Fei suddenly understood. It turned out that this was a smaller version of the 500 people who went offline. If they go offline, then there's really nothing we can do. Gu Fei said helplessly to the 3 people. Hurry up. They'll all go offline in a while. Slim Waist Dance was anxious. The chase continued, and so did the hiding. But under Gu Fei's monitoring of the coordinates every minute, other than going offline, there was really no other way to escape from this chase. The second person, the third person. One after another, the targets were killed. Some of the entire team was killed, and some were alone. Those who were fast turned around and ran when they saw the 4 of them. And those who were slow cursed when they saw the 4 of them. The 4 of them unexpectedly saw through many of the players who were obviously passers-by, so they naturally killed them along the way. The terrifying chase continued until all 4 of them had PK points of 29. At this time, there were no more targets on Gu Fei's wanted list. Some were killed by them, some escaped and went offline, and some just happened to disappear when the time came. They were the luckiest. The 4 of them went back to wash their PK points, but how would the experienced players know? The players who had PK points continued to be nervous, and those who reached the main city all ran offline. The experienced players were also very anxious. In reality, the overall losses weren't too big. Only a few dozen people died, but the problem was that their morale was continuously hit. Could these people continue to persevere? The experienced players didn't know what to do, and they had no way to boost their morale. If they wanted to boost their morale, the only way was to get rid of these perverts. But the experienced players really didn't have any ideas. If he had a way, would he have needed to go down the most troublesome path of using the human wave tactic? Just as morale was at a low ebb, an unexpected piece of news caused everyone's spirits to rise. 1,000 Miles Drunk had gone offline. Those who were hiding, and those who were on tenterhooks all felt relieved when they heard this news. Everyone sent this great news to each other, and the low morale immediately rose again. All because the pressure suddenly disappeared. It looks like Qianli got drunk and went offline to rest. And according to our understanding of this person, he doesn't actually play much every day, and his rest time is very long. Everyone, hurry up. Take advantage of the fact that Qianli is drunk and won't cause trouble, and hurry up. The experienced players said to the big shots of the various armies. Although the Sword Demon's previous harassment was more eye-catching than Gu Fei's restraining effect was indispensable. The Sword Demon was very clear about this, and how could these big shots not know? So at this time, although there was only one less drunk Qianli, the previous threat would no longer be repeated. Everyone hurriedly cherished this hard-won opportunity and hurried up. Just as the various armies were hurrying through the night, they didn't know that on the game forum, there was another explosive news at this time. The efficiency leveling method that had caused a craze before, and then quieted down for a period of time, was once again out of the mountains. This time, it was no longer guided by Qianli when he was drunk, but managed by Cloud Soaring Studio. They would choose a leveling area of 45 to 50 in each of the 30 main cities, and start teaching at the same time. The registration was hot. Chapter 9:18. Compared to the game, the forum wasn't just a day or two of activity. In the game, Gu Fei and the others caused a lot of commotion, but the disturbance they caused was still small. It wasn't even as large as the previous citywide war between Cloud City and Moonlit City. Even if more than 20 main cities sent out their elite experts, each city only had around 500 people. Moreover, everyone had a destination, so they didn't cause any disturbances in their respective cities. But the forum was different. From the initial release of the efficiency leveling method, to the start of the citywide war, to the rewards, to the dispute between Gu Fei and the studio, to the throwing of equipment, all of these things attracted the attention of the people. In this place where strength was not required, only eloquence was required. Everyone was like Gu Fei, a peerless expert who was 1 in 10,000, giving out eloquent comments. During this period of time, the gossips party was also very helpful. Topics worth discussing came one after another. More than 20 main cities had sent out their elite experts. Before anyone could enter into a substantive discussion, the efficiency leveling method once again appeared in the world of martial artists and caused another uproar. Gu Fei and the others had only publicly sold the efficiency leveling method once before it was stopped because of the citywide war. But this time, the impact it caused wasn't as simple as tens of thousands of players mastering the efficiency leveling method. Baishur City's White Mill was the first leveling area that Gu Fei and the others had developed. It was also the place where the national education campaign was carried out. At this time, the White Mill had become a holy place for leveling, but this holy place was full of white light and fighting. Under the unremitting efforts of the pirates, the number of players who had mastered the White Mill efficiency leveling method was several times more than the number of students that Gu Fei and the others had recruited. Moreover, the number was still growing. After all, this place wasn't like Yin Zhongmu's 10-guild alliance, where they communicated privately. In the current game, using the White Mill efficiency leveling method to farm monsters was the fastest way to level up. This matter was already known by everyone. Local people, foreign people, individuals, guilds, people who wanted to level up, people who wanted to learn, and even people who wanted to understand the meaning of the efficiency leveling method. Many people gathered around Baishur City's White Mill. There were more people than monsters at any time of the day. No matter how powerful a guild was, they couldn't control the situation here, nor did they dare to do so. The players who first learned the original set from Gu Fei, and the others were the ones who suffered the most. They were not efficient at all, and after a few days the leveling area had become like this. He knew the high-efficiency leveling method, but he didn't even have the chance to use it. However, there was one thing that had to be said. The efficient leveling method had clearly gained the approval of all the players. Everyone could see that this method lived up to its name. It was a powerful method that could bridge the gap between players' equipment. It was a pity that this method of fighting monsters was too targeted. The method used in the White Mill would be ineffective in other places. Moreover, no player would be able to see the hidden meaning behind this method. Seeing that the White Mill had become the world's worst leveling area, every player hoped for a new leveling area to appear. But looking at the lessons learned from the mistakes of the White Mill, the players were really worried. They were afraid that they would end up like this batch of students. After looking forward to it for so long, a new wave of efficient leveling teaching had finally arrived. The players weren't disappointed by the massive commotion this time. There were a total of 60 leveling areas in 30 main cities, and all of them were level 40. Compared to the previous leveling areas in each city, this was a huge improvement. The players in the main cities cheered when they saw the news. Those who were high enough were ready to register, while those who were not high enough were wondering if they could learn the leveling method first. The players outside of the 30 main cities also saw hope in this news. This was because the workshop had already promised to open the remaining main cities to teaching. The reason why they hadn't opened it at the same time was because the workshop had limited resources and manpower. The resources here were, of course, referring to 100 generations of classics. 100 generations of classics had been developing the leveling method by himself. After so many days, it was already his limit to create 60 leveling areas day and night. Currently, in terms of developing the efficient leveling method, 100 generations of classics proficiency had increased greatly. Moreover, with the help of Jian Nan and other experienced and proficient assistants, the development speed was getting faster and faster. As for the lack of manpower, it was because they wanted to develop the leveling areas for level 40. They needed teachers that matched their levels. Level 40 players were a scarce resource for the workshop, and they didn't have that many internally. Currently, 60 leveling areas in 30 cities were already very difficult. Many people would not only lead a single class. Of course, the players outside of the workshop knew nothing about this problem. In any case, this was what the workshop had told them. Moreover, they had deeply communicated with the players about the current tragedy at White Mill and White Stone City, telling them to be patient and not swarm over to a single leveling area. This was because they would popularize the leveling areas in all main cities step by step. If not for the White Mill, the players might have ignored this advice. However, after witnessing the White Mill, which was supposed to be the most efficient leveling area, become the least efficient leveling area due to the swarm of players, everyone understood that the workshop's advice was very reliable. Therefore, apart from some with ulterior motives, most players continued to stay in their hometown and wait for the progress of Cloud Soaring Workshop's work. As a result, Cloud Soaring Workshop's reputation soared instantly. Previously, Cloud Soaring Workshop's poaching had already made a name for itself in the circle. Now this business had instantly made the players in the game remember their name. At this time, Nitrite discovered that the double-edged sword of cooperation with Very Overpowered had been completely forged. On the players' side, their business had officially started. At this time, the work points in the 30 main cities were extremely busy. Players flocked to sign up to learn more efficient leveling methods, filling the streets. Players from other main cities were also trying to find out through various channels. When will the teaching be spread to their cities? The prospects could be said to be bright. However, the bright prospects naturally attracted the jealousy of their peers. In addition, the previous exaggerated poaching method was really not a beautiful competitive method. Cloud Soaring Workshop's reputation in the industry was growing, but its reputation was getting worse and worse. On the business side, Nitrite was currently racking his brains to think of a good relationship with other peers. There was no need to think about Ingqi. In a short period of time, they would definitely be enemies. However, Nitrite still had to communicate with the other workshops. Otherwise, if they really stood on Ingqi's side and completely isolated Cloud Soaring Workshop, the result would not be too good. After all, Nitrite and the others wanted to do business. Business had to be developed and sustained. Dying after one's craving was just speculation. Cloud Soaring Workshop and the others were the leaders of the three bosses. Nitrite was mainly in charge of such matters. That was why he had a lot of communication with the Han family young master. The other two were more in charge of the specific business side. Now that the efficient leveling method had entered a substantial stage, Immemorial Strategist and the others did not have to worry too much. They were still the technical team, continuing to develop the new leveling area. At this time, Experience Frost's expression was very, very ugly. Teaching in 30 main cities included the 26 cities where they were going on this expedition. This was definitely not a coincidence. Moreover, Cloud Soaring Workshop was the one in charge of this operation. They were already well aware of the private relationship between Cloud Soaring Workshop and Very Overpowered. He believed that this was not fake news. Workshops were business people. Why would they destroy their own reputation like this? No matter how much help Very Overpowered was, they could not throw away their own lives, right? But to be the first to start this business in their hometown, this was definitely a very heaven-defying secret help. At this time, Experience Frost finally understood why Cloud Soaring Workshop was so loyal to Very Overpowered. It turned out that there was such a huge benefit behind the scenes. However, they had always been thinking about how to destroy Very Overpowered in terms of force. Their thinking was simply too simple. This move was like pulling the firewood out from under the cauldron. Experience Frost had only just heard the news. They were all online, so it would be slower for them to know about the news on the forum. It had not spread among the team yet, but what would happen when it did? We can still learn the efficient leveling method when we go back at night. Experience Frost thought about some possibilities. He had also heard of the story of the White Mill in White Stone City. Although there were only a few players who paid to learn it at the beginning, there were many who learned it secretly, sold it, and shared it with their friends. This caused the number of players to increase exponentially. Even if all the players in a single main city went to one area, they would not be able to squeeze in, let alone the players from all over the world. From the looks of it, there was not much difference whether they went first or later. Yi Xiaowu had always been with Experience Frost. After hearing the news, he was even more shocked. Reckless. This is too reckless. Yi Xiaowu's face was even uglier than Experience Frost. Experience Frost was only worried that their main city's development would shake their team's morale. Yi Xiaowu was worried that this efficient leveling method would destroy the game. I hope everyone won't be reckless. Experience Frost said. How can it not be reckless? How can it not be reckless? Whitestone City is a good example. In the end, how can there be any efficient leveling method? The entire leveling area is a mess. It's impossible to level normally. Yi Xiaowu said. I'm talking about our team. Experience Frost said. I'm talking about the leveling area. Yi Xiaowu said. Clearly, the chaos in their mouths did not mean the same thing. The leveling area is definitely chaotic. What are you blindly worrying about? Experience Frost said. This will ruin the game. Yi Xiaowu was indignant. Experience Frost glanced at him and felt that this person was a bit strange. But in the end he was startled. What he had said just now had reminded him. The leveling area is chaotic. What are you blindly worrying about? Experience Frost said this to Yi Xiaowu. That's right, there was no need to worry about those who didn't go to the leveling area. But what about those who did? Chapter 919. Yi Xiaowu wouldn't go to those places to level up, so he shouldn't have to worry. Weathered Frost didn't have the mood to care about this, so he shouldn't have to worry either. However, he thought about who would be worried, and what kind of influence this worried person would bring to their team. Guild. An efficient leveling method had appeared in the leveling areas around the main city. Which level 40 player wouldn't want to learn it? Who wouldn't want to use it after learning it? Everyone knew about the situation in Whitestone City. In order to prevent such a situation from happening again, someone had to worry. Of course, this wasn't something that could be picked up from the streets to deal with. It had to be someone with strength, who could speak, and who could control the situation. Who could such a person be? Weathered Frost thought of his main city. Such a person, the first person that came to his mind was his guild leader. However, a guild leader standing on the street with his hands on his hips seemed to be of limited use, especially in an event like this where everyone was in the mood to join in. So, if he wanted to control the situation, it wasn't something that could be done with just one person's words. He had to show the strength to control the situation. How could he do that? Of course, it would be from the guild. So in the end, it wasn't the strength of a single person that could control the situation, but the strength of a guild. The strength of a guild. Weathered Frost's forehead was a little sweaty. 1/3 of his guild's strength had been gathered here by him. And the rest of the players represented the strength of the other big guilds in their main city. Now that there was suddenly an efficient leveling method, the guild would probably summon people back to take charge of the situation. It wasn't just his group that would face this problem. All 26 legions would face this problem as well. Because they were all the guild's elites, they represented the strength of the guild. At this time, how could the guild not summon them back to take charge of the situation? On one side, it was the private affairs of the 26 important figures. On the other side, it was the entire guild, or even the level 40 players in the entire city. It wasn't difficult to make this trade-off at all. This method of removing the firewood from under the cauldron was too ruthless. Weathered Frost knew that there was definitely an expert in this heaven-defying formation. At this time he sensed the other party's intentions, but he was completely powerless to stop it. Everyone, don't worry about home, come with me to kill people first? If he said that, he wouldn't be able to explain himself to the guild. He wouldn't be able to explain himself to his brothers. He stared at the notification and guessed that the president would probably send a message soon. The president knew that there were so many of them, and no matter how they tried to persuade him, he couldn't refuse. He could only retreat with everyone. Before he received any news from the president, he received a message from level 1 hypothermia. Have you heard? First Low Temperature asked him. Are you talking about the efficient leveling method? Yes. I heard about it. What should we do? Level 1 low temperature obviously thought of the same thing after hearing about this. What's the situation on your side? Actually, I only have around 200 people from my guild. The other 200 people are all friends of mine who I'm quite good with. They're from their guilds. He was the one who told me the news. And now their guild is calling them back. The people that came over heard about the high leveling efficiency. I don't think they'll be able to move anymore. My side is already in a mess. First low temperature said. Sigh. Experience Frost sighed. Sure enough, even if the president at home was willing to let them continue, the people that they brought out would definitely be in a mess when they heard the news. Their alliance's morale was already low, especially after walking for half a day. They were lonely and tired. Hearing the news now, everyone would definitely be eager to go back. Experience Frost's worries quickly became reality. There was no news from the president on his side, but the other big shots came to him one after another to tell him about the matter. The situation was the same as first low temperature. The guild was calling everyone back. Everyone came because of a favor, so they couldn't just turn around and leave without saying anything. Of course, they still had to inform the person who called them, and the reason was really good. 10 years is not too late for a gentleman to take revenge. What guild interest is above personal interest? Even among the 26 founders, there were some who wanted to go back and settle the matter of the high leveling efficiency first. They were also thinking, it's very overpowered. Anyway, there's nowhere to hide in Cloud City. It doesn't matter if we kill them a few days later, we're not in a hurry. Experience Frost saw that the messages sent to him were basically not to discuss with him, but to inform him of the outcome of the matter. Half of the people had already turned around and returned. A small portion of people might not have received the news yet, and there was no movement for the time being. There were only a few people like him and first low temperature who were conflicted. I think. Why don't we go back first? We can go to Cloud City anytime. First low temperature sent a message to Experience Frost. His team had also stopped. The players were all talking about the high leveling efficiency, so he was too embarrassed to urge them to continue on their way. Going back was a foregone conclusion, and he couldn't change anything even if he was conflicted. If he let everyone back, it would be a small favor. If he continued to yell and move forward, not only would it make people feel disgusted, but it would also be a problem if people would listen to him. Sigh. Experience Frost sighed. What could he do? After all, everyone's identity was the same, they were all players. Even if he was extremely unwilling, no one would act according to his mood. Let's go back. Experience Frost replied to first low temperature, and at the same time his team stopped moving forward. Has everyone heard about the high leveling efficiency? Experience Frost took the initiative to greet the players while contacting the guild leader. High leveling efficiency? What's wrong? The guild leader replied. As expected, this guy still hadn't heard about it. Experience Frost told the guild leader about it, and as expected, the guild leader's spirit was lifted. He immediately replied, Then why aren't you coming back? I'm coming back now. Experience Frost was helpless. This matter needs to be handled quickly, the guild leader said as he went to work. The 30 main cities that announced the teaching of the high leveling efficiency all instantly became the same. There were quite a number of players who were level 40 and above. After hearing about it, they were both excited and anxious. The excitement was naturally because they knew the power of the high leveling efficiency, and the anxiety was because they heard about the predicament after Baisher promoted the high leveling efficiency. Although the studio called for everyone to stay in the local area and not wander around, they couldn't do anything about it. And even if there weren't any foreign guests, just the local players flocking to the 2 leveling areas wouldn't be able to handle it. The players who often had a lot of time to play in the middle of the night laughed. After all, at that time, the number of players online was still very low, and there weren't many idle people. And the players who had to work and go to school, and had no time during the day or in the wee hours of the morning, and could only play during the golden hours of the night, were crying. The time when they often played was not efficient, and the leveling areas were very crowded. Now they were afraid that they would repeat the mistakes of Baishur City. The players of the main cities all realized this problem. And just as Experience Frost expected, the big guilds would inevitably stand up and take charge of the situation. The guild leaders of the 6 major guilds in the main cities all spoke, and each of them thought of a solution. Those who liked peace suggested different areas and times, and those who respected the strong proposed to fight for areas. The leaders of the major cities finally sat together to discuss how to solve this situation. At this time, the lonely people without guilds were more pitiful, and the guild discussions basically ignored them. But this was also something that couldn't be helped. The people who didn't join guilds enjoyed unfettered freedom, but at this time, they naturally didn't have such a backer. While the players in the main cities discussed solutions, they continued to pay attention to the news from Cloud Soaring Studio. Cloud Soaring Studio wasn't in a hurry. After all, this was also the first time they were doing this business. They had to observe the players' reactions step by step. First, they made an announcement on the forum, attracting everyone's attention. Then Cloud Soaring Studio announced a price. Compared to Gufei's previous price, it was even lower, and it caused a lot of cheers. Then they accurately announced the leveling area where the teaching would be carried out, and considerately reminded the players in the main cities to make preparations to avoid a repeat of the tragedy in Whitestone City. Then they made an announcement about the teaching work in the other main cities, and other leveling areas. This announcement was undoubtedly more effective in stabilizing the situation. Those players who were in a foreign land saw this announcement, and they really settled down and prepared to wait for the teaching to come to them. In addition, the communication between Cloud Soaring Studio and the other studios was also fruitful. Cloud Soaring Studio went from being hated by everyone to being loved by everyone. The method was very simple. Nitrite Radical didn't monopolize it. He developed the other studios as partners, and they became his secondary agents. He divided the efficient leveling methods of the other main cities equally to the other studios, and he only took a commission from them. This way, not only did it save manpower, but more importantly, Nitrite Radical also had a lot of scruples about the efficient leveling methods. He was especially afraid that the game company would have any objections, so he found more people to share the benefits. The more people there were, the bigger the background, and it would be more stable. The studios received the sweetness, so what else could they say? They all praised Cloud Soaring Studio for being generous. In the end, the only one who didn't get the efficient leveling methods was Ingqi, except for the inferior studios that weren't qualified at all. Nitrite Radical also thought about using this opportunity to see if there was a possibility of reconciliation with Ingqi, but he gave up in the end. Although business was business, people still had to do business. Nitrite Radical wasn't thick-skinned enough. He couldn't put down his pride to look for Ingqi and pretend that nothing happened. These guys. After hearing the news, Ingqi's boss, Matchless Wonder, was fuming with anger. It was such a big deal, but he didn't even get a single cent of it. More importantly, his entire plan was ruined because of this deal. Chapter 920. Boss, this doesn't count as sabotage, does it? It's just a temporary delay, Five Nights commented. Eternal was also there, but he didn't say anything. He also understood the mentality of the players. Sometimes, some things depended on impulse to reach the end. These experienced people had suffered losses again and again in a very heaven-defying battle. That was why they had accumulated their anger and mobilized all the manpower they could to carry out this expedition. Who would have thought that they would be interrupted by such a thing? Learning the efficiency leveling method might be quick, but maintaining a stable and harmonious situation in the leveling area wasn't something that could be done in a day or two. These people suddenly ran back to the main city. Eternal was sure that they weren't in a hurry to learn the efficiency leveling method, but because they were all elites and needed to go back to manage the situation. Once the situation stabilized, wouldn't the accumulated impulses from before dissipate? It seemed like Matchless Hero understood this logic, which was why he had a worried look on his face. Five Nights didn't listen to his words of consolation and turned to Eternal. Eternal, contact them and see what their attitude is. Okay, Eternal replied. In reality, Eternal could already guess what these people were thinking, But since the boss had given him the order, he still had to ask. After asking, it was as he had expected. If it was up to them, these experienced people would definitely not want to retreat. Unfortunately, they had no choice but to do so. They didn't have much control over their team, just like how Age Workshop didn't have much control over them, even though they had hired them to do things. Matchless Hero's expression was extremely ugly. He estimated that his efforts were going to be in vain this time. Even though he didn't suffer any losses, he could only watch helplessly from the sidelines while his peers were all trying to learn the efficiency leveling method. This was already a huge setback. Matchless Hero's eyes suddenly turned and stared at Wu Yi. Five Knights subconsciously shrank back, because he already knew what his boss was going to say. Where is he? Where is he? Where is the person I asked you to find? Didn't you say that you had a lead? Why haven't you found him yet? Matchless Hero couldn't keep his cool anymore and roared. Five Knights didn't dare to make a sound, even though he felt wronged. It hadn't been long since he'd started this matter, so it wasn't too slow. It was a pity that their competitors were faster. Forever watched from the side, and suddenly understood. He knew that Wu Yi had been following unparalleled Genius Ying's orders to find someone. And it seemed to be someone important. From the looks of it, the person Five Knights was looking for might have something to do with this efficient leveling method. After all, the world was so big. It was impossible for Qianli to be the only one with this talent. Thinking of this, Perpetual's understanding of Matchless Hero's plan deepened. On one hand, provoking the players to fight and selling equipment and resources like crazy was one reason. On the other hand, this guy had always been thinking about efficient leveling methods. If he messed around with extremely defiant, Qianli would be too drunk to come out. Naturally, he wouldn't be able to cooperate with others to level up. As expected of a businessman, Forever couldn't help but sigh. He really didn't think about this at all. You can't even do something like this? What are you doing? Matchless Hero completely lost his composure and scolded Five Knights more and more. Forever couldn't take it anymore. His status in front of the boss was quite low. Fortunately, he was only a semi-professional, and Matchless Wonder had always been polite to him. At the very least, he wouldn't be so arrogant. I don't think I can count on you for this. Leave it to Forever. Matchless Hero suddenly said. Forever was startled. His job was actually to fight for Matchless Hero in the game. Recently, things had been a little chaotic, so the Eagle Party had helped Matchless Hero with some business matters, such as moving warehouses. However, they weren't willing to do these things. It seemed like Matchless Hero was going to push more and more things onto him. Forever, you do it. Matchless Hero's tone changed when he spoke to Forever. Five Knights was depressed, but he couldn't show it on his face. He knew that their statuses were different. He relied on this to survive, while Matchless Hero probably relied on this to earn some pocket money. What's the situation on your side? Explain it to Forever. Matchless Hero was forcefully handing over what Five Knights couldn't do to Forever. Five Knights hurriedly said, I found him. He's called Chun Chi, an assassin from Xenia. He's level 42, which isn't high. We can confirm that he's the one we're looking for. However, he hasn't been online for the past few days, and we can't find a way to contact him. After Five Knights said this, he stole a glance at his boss. He wanted to use this opportunity to clarify his grievances. He had found the person, but he wasn't online, so there was nothing he could do. He hasn't been online? Matchless Hero's tone lowered after hearing this. He had been yelling at Five Knights the entire time. He hasn't been online. We've contacted some of his in-game friends, but none of them have his contact details. Five Knights said. I don't think there's any other way. We can only wait, right? Forever said. Five Knights obviously couldn't say anything, so he continued to shrink his neck and not say anything. The game is so big. Apart from this, there's no other person? Matchless Hero was a bit unreasonable, so he had to find a reason to vent. Not at the moment. Five Knights said honestly. This person, just who is he? Forever wanted to confirm his guess. He's like Qianli one drunkard. I heard that he knows Kung Fu. Matchless Hero said. Gu Fei had never tried to hide the fact that he knew Kung Fu. If someone asked him why he was so strong, he would definitely tell them the truth. However, this answer was hard to accept. It was just like what happened to Gu Fei in real life. When he told his students that he knew Kung Fu, they all thought he was a Wuxia novel addict. Most people would think that this answer was an excuse that Gu Fei used to hide his skills. However, as they got to know each other better, the truth would eventually be accepted by others. Even Gu Fei himself didn't know that he knew Kung Fu. This was something that he said himself, and it was becoming more and more accepted by the players in the game. This was undoubtedly one of the reasons why Qianli One Drunkard was different from normal players. It was obvious why he was able to create an efficient leveling method, while others couldn't. Age's studio was the first to approach Qianli One Drunkard in order to obtain the efficient leveling method, but unfortunately, they failed. However, it was that failure that made Five Nights realize that the efficient leveling method wasn't exclusive to Qianli One Drunkard. This was because Qianli One Drunkard didn't seem to have any intentions of interfering in the first place. He was fighting for the 100 Generations Scholar. Qianli One Drunkard wasn't the only one, and he wasn't the only one who could create the efficient leveling method. After realizing this, Age began to search for players that could replace Qianli One Drunkard. However, not long after, there was a large change in currency and a series of city wars. The studio's focus also shifted. After that, there was a big change in personnel, and a lot of things slowed down the progress of this matter. It was not easy to find such a person in the last 5 nights, but the person refused to go online no matter what. As a result, in the blink of an eye, the Cloud Soaring Studio had already launched an efficient leveling method. This Chun-Chi is this person's ID? Unparalleled Wonder thought about this and felt depressed for a while before speaking again. Yes. Five Nights nodded. It sounds like his real name, Unparalleled Wonder said. I'm not sure about that. Five Nights said. Very few people in the game would use their real name as an ID, but this person with a real name really did seem like it. Just keep an eye on him. He'll log on eventually, Eternal said. At this moment, Unparalleled Wonder needed a way out of this situation. It clearly didn't matter if Five Nights or Eternal did it. Everyone could only wait for him to log on. Eternal's soft words covered up Unparalleled Wonder's impulsive desire to hand this over to him. Unparalleled Wonder nodded and didn't say anything else. The matter of handing over the ID was left unsettled. Yin Tung and the others are leveling up. Should we go and create some trouble for them? Five Nights asked tentatively. It's useless. Unparalleled Wonder shook his head. From the situation in Whitestone City, it would be easy to cause some trouble, but the problem was that creating a bit of trouble wouldn't solve the root of the problem. If it was exposed, Age would be in trouble again. Then what should we do now? Five Nights asked tentatively. He didn't want his boss to think that he had no ideas, but in the current situation, he really didn't have any ideas. He felt that Age's current situation could be described as being besieged on all sides. There was no way out. Even though they have a lot of people participating in the leveling method, they don't have many core developers, so their progress won't be that fast. If we can get in touch with this Chun-Chi in the next 2 days, we'll be able to take a portion of the market. As for the very overpowered side, it's best if we can maintain those people's feelings towards them. Eternal, what do you think? Unparalleled Wonder asked. We can try to create some rumors in their main cities. They gathered experts for an expedition, and then returned halfway. Even though there's a special reason, it's still a bit embarrassing. We can create some rumors that mock them, target their players and target their guilds. In any case, we'll be able to gather even more power in the end. Eternal said. Not bad. Unparalleled Wonder nodded his head. Also on the forums, we can find some people to pretend to be very overpowered and mock them in their main cities. Eternal said. Chapter 921. Eternal understood the mentality of the players too well. How to make the players' resentment last forever. Drop equipment? Reduce levels? These were useful, but they were troublesome and could easily be overdone. If a player was killed until they were level 10 and lost all their equipment, their resentment would last forever, but at the same time, They would also be disheartened and unable to lift their spirits. As such, the best method was to use Eternal's suggestion. Create rumors and humiliate the players. These experienced players were all reputable people in the main city. Now that they were being pointed at by others as cowards, this was even more painful than losing their equipment. What was even better was that the more rumors spread, the more exaggerated they became. Due to Ying Qi's intentional planning, it was very easy for them to look down on Weathered Frost's group, as well as their friends and guild members who had gone through Weathered Frost to look down on them. This was what Eternal meant when he said that there might be an even more terrifying force to be reckoned with. Matchless Wonder appreciated Eternal's suggestion, and immediately ordered 5 knights to find someone to carry it out. Fighting and killing people was not something that a studio could do, but creating rumors and guiding public opinion was their forte. Manipulating the market and adjusting prices were things that studios often did. How could they do these things without using public opinion and creating rumors? The studio was very familiar with this. Ying Qi was very familiar with this business. Yin Teng's leveling business was much more efficient than Gu Fei's. At the very least, they had more people than Gu Fei and the others in terms of accounting and statistics. Moreover, they were very responsible, unlike Gu Fei and the others, who only wanted to reap the fruits of their harvest and avoided the dirty and tiring work. Cloud Tung had already done a detailed investigation of the leveling areas, and naturally had their own way of assessing the saturation of leveling. In short, after collecting money, ordering, informing the players of the time, the teaching tasks had already been assigned, and the players who paid had already received emails informing them of when the classes would begin. Cloud Tung's progress was godly, but the guilds were dragging their feet. The major guilds of the main cities had yet to come up with a proper plan. They had contacted Cloud Tung to find out how many students there were, and Cloud Tung had provided them with accurate numbers. However, these guild leaders knew very well that the data would be greatly exaggerated. This didn't mean that Yin Teng would falsify the data, but that the players would take advantage of it. After all, things like efficient leveling methods were very easy to share. If one person were to learn it, who knew how many disciples would follow him? Large guilds like theirs, which had over 1,000 members, wouldn't actually pay the fee for 1,000 members. It would be good if they could pay the fee for 100 members. Even if they did, they would wait for the fee to be popularized within the guild. Of course, the studio didn't have to bear any responsibility for the thoughts of the players. The studio would simply recruit a suitable number of players based on the leveling areas they had inspected. If a single player was followed by a large group of players, the studio wouldn't be able to do anything about it. There was no need to worry about the studios, but the players had to worry. According to the number of people revealed by the workshop, and considering this situation, magnified several times, the leaders of the major guilds all had the desire to vomit blood. They seemed to have already seen that if these 2 leveling areas of their respective main cities were left unchecked, they would inevitably follow in the footsteps of Whitestone City's White Mill. They had to take some measures. After all, there were still many capable people. The elites of the various main cities and guilds all expressed their own opinions. As a result, some main cities began to divide the leveling areas. Some main cities took to the streets to advertise to the players, and some main cities' major guilds first occupied the leveling areas. The methods were different, but the central idea was the same: to make the efficient leveling method truly efficient. Weathered through hardships, low temperature, sandpaper, these people had lost levels, but their status in the guild had already been established. Naturally, it wouldn't change because of the level difference. At this time, all of them were first-class backbones, running around busily for the sake of this efficient leveling method. Another day passed just like that. Weathered through hardships, their main cities finally had a plan that everyone agreed on. They divided the 2 major leveling areas. Regardless of the others, the major guilds would first ensure that they had a leveling area. As for the other idle open spaces, they simply didn't care about it. If the other small guilds or wild players wanted to fight and cause trouble, they could do as they pleased. Weathered through hardships, their major guilds weren't prepared to be the heroes who upheld justice. They only confirmed one thing: their major guilds were in an offensive and defensive alliance. If someone came to make trouble here, then they would teach the other party a lesson together. This plan had actually been adopted by their major guilds in the beginning of Whitestone City. But unfortunately, Whitestone City was attacked by level 40 players from all over the world at that time. Even if the major guilds were in an offensive and defensive alliance, they couldn't withstand this excessive number of refugees. Today was different from the past. This time, the workshop hosted the efficient leveling method. There wouldn't be this kind of fugitive appearing again. Therefore, these major guilds that had experienced hardships felt that they could control the situation. It's finally done. Weathered through hardships let out a long sigh of relief and entered the tavern with a few of his guild brothers. These few days of life were too exciting. Being hired, losing levels, going to jail, running around. It was fulfilling, but why wasn't any of this fulfilling content good? After sitting down in the tavern, Weathered through the past few days of gaming life felt sad. He fiercely ordered a large barrel of alcohol and prepared to get drunk to solve all his worries. The few that came with Weathered through hardships were the ones that flew with him to Cloud City. Weathered through hardships, they basically didn't run away. It was really difficult. At this moment, they had the same thought as Weathered through hardships. If they don't get drunk, it'll be hard to get rid of the depression in their hearts. Brothers, come, cheers. Weathered through hardships raised his glass. He was annoyed in his heart. His hatred for against Overpowered was far from over, but the current situation definitely wouldn't allow him to leave for the next few days. After all, the efficient leveling method hadn't really started. They were only doing preparatory activities. When the time came, they still needed to deal with the situation. How could he leave? After a few days, when the situation stabilized, he really didn't know if it would be convenient to recruit people like last time. Perhaps at that time, everyone would be addicted to the fun of the efficient leveling method, and he would be even more embarrassed to ask for help. Damn, this is so depressing. Cheers. Weathered through hardships finished one glass and quickly raised a second. Everyone at the table was in a bad mood, so of course the drinking was also depressing. Everyone just listened to the shouts and drank mechanically. Whenever they chatted with each other, they would always talk about that annoying thing called against Overpowered. As a result, the few of them began to drink while looking around, hoping to find something interesting to eat and drink to pass the time of this depressing time. As soon as they looked around, they immediately saw a few players at the surrounding tables sneaking glances at them. Some of them were sneaking glances while quietly discussing something with their table mates. Weathered through hardships was a famous person in the main city. He was used to people pointing at him when he walked on the road. But today's situation was a bit off. Why were those people not serious when they were talking about them? Was he that funny? Hey! Weathered through hardships wasn't someone who couldn't calm down, but at this time, with the help of the alcohol, he immediately slammed the table and pointed at the people at the table closest to him. What are you guys talking about? Come over and have a chat with me. Haha, Boss Frost, what do you want to talk about? A player at that table said as he stood up and walked over. Weathered through hardships looked up and saw the badge on the other party's chest. Oh? A person from Troubled Times. Troubled Times was also a rank 6 guild in this main city. However, Weathered through hardships and his guild had always been at odds with each other. Even though it wasn't to the point where they would kill each other on sight, it could be said that they were competitors. Yeah. The other party nodded his head. Do you know Mao Qing? Weathered through hardships asked. Of course I do. The other party replied. Mao Qing was one of the core members of their guild. He's an idiot. Listen to his name, Mao Qing. What does that mean? Hat cuckold? Damn, isn't that an idiot? Weathered through hardships wasn't someone who was normally like this. However, recently things hadn't been going well for him, and he was depressed. Now that he was drinking, he saw someone pointing at him. Moreover, it was someone from an enemy guild. He immediately knew that they weren't saying anything good about him, so he immediately threw a harsh look at them. The other party laughed coldly. How's Boss Feng Shuang recently? I heard that you went to Cloud City. Weathered through hardships' face turned ugly. He had already guessed that the other party was talking about this. However, it hadn't been that long, So how did it spread so quickly? Were all the fellows in the room whispering to each other talking about this? Bad news really spread to Qianli. Weathered through hardships looked left and right. What is Boss Feng Shuang looking for? Is he afraid that the people from Cloud City will chase after him? That person laughed and then turned to look at his brothers. Oh right, what's the name of the expert from Cloud City? Qianli One Drunk. Someone immediately cooperated with him. With their guild relationship, if they fought, they would feel that it would be too much of a loss, so they couldn't bear to do so. As a result, mocking each other became their favorite sport. In this aspect, they had a very high level of teamwork. Oh right, Qianli One Drunk. That person nodded his head. Seeing that Weathered Through Hardship's face was still expressionless, he shouted again. Qianli One Drunk. What do you mean? Weathered Through Hardships raised his head and stared at him. I want to see if Boss Feng Shuang will crawl under the table after hearing this name. After that person said this, he didn't laugh, but his brothers behind him laughed out loud together. Fuck. Weathered Through Hardships was angry. If he still wasn't angry, then he wouldn't be a man. Actually, these two guilds had bickered with each other before. However, it was as if everyone had agreed to it. They would only win with words and never PK. But today, Weathered Through Hardship situation, this psychological background, in addition to the alcohol-stimulated brain, the ruthless beating of the spine. More importantly, in the past when someone couldn't bear it, there would always be someone beside them who would stop them. But today the other party's words were too broad. Everyone was in the same situation and mood as Weathered Through Hardships. Thus, everyone at the table fought to be the first to attack. You motherfucker, go to hell. Everyone shouted. Chapter 922. Every main city had its own tavern, and every main city also had player-owned taverns. Compared to the system taverns, player-owned taverns weren't big enough, and they didn't have a wide variety of drinks, but players still preferred player-owned taverns. Apart from the fact that player-owned taverns were more considerate and casual, the key was that they could communicate with each other if something happened, unlike the system, which only did things based on data and never showed mercy. For example, in this situation, player-owned taverns were very helpful. When Lucky arrived at the tavern, he saw half of the room filled with wood shavings. The tables and chairs were all destroyed, and some of them were still smoking. It could be seen that the battle was intense. A few fire spells from a mage shouldn't have been able to burn the tables. For them to be able to burn them, they must have used a lot of spells. How are you? Are you alright? Geely arrived at the ruined tavern, and saw that it was still in ruins. He and his brothers were still drinking in the middle of the tavern. Weathered Frost turned around and saw their guild leader. He shook his head. I'm fine, one died. Where's the owner? Lucky asked. It's been taken care of. Weathered Frost smiled. This was the benefit of causing trouble in a player-owned tavern. The owner was a person and could sit down and discuss. It wasn't like the system's taverns, where if something happened, the system guards would come and fine the owner to death. As long as the owner didn't request permission from the system wouldn't interfere. I know you're in a bad mood. Lucky patted Weathered Frost's shoulder. Some people don't know, and they're the unlucky ones. Weathered Frost handed Lucky a bottle of wine. Lucky took a sip and smiled. Are you in a better mood now? Weathered Frost laughed and changed the topic. You're fast. Lucky had arrived. Weathered Frost's guild leader was famous for being slow to react. For example, when it came to the efficiency leveling method, his reaction was much slower than others. His name was Weathered Frost, but he was famous for being late. Those who didn't like their guild wouldn't call him Weathered Frost, they would call him late. I was just passing by, Lucky said. Both of them didn't say anything else. After all, the following conversation would be carried out in the guild channel. Lucky didn't ask any questions when he arrived. When he received the news, he already knew that Hardboiled had gotten into a fight with the players from troubled times. As he walked over, he called for reinforcements from the guild. He was only concerned about Hardboiled and the others, but he didn't bother to ask about the cause of the fight. That wasn't important. The two guilds weren't on good terms. No matter who was right or wrong, Lucky would definitely bring his guild brothers to support them. Both sides had been bickering with each other for a long time. There were many times when a PK could have happened, but it could be said that it was luck that it did not happen. However, both sides were already mentally prepared. Sooner or later, the two sides would have to fight to the death. However, it just had to happen at a time when the leveling efficiency was low. Lucky could only sigh at the irony of fate. What did that mean? Were they going to let everyone lose a level first, then work together to improve the efficiency? While Lucky was drinking and chatting with Hardboiled, the other door of the tavern was slammed open. A few people jumped in and glanced over at Hardboiled and the others. The leader of the group was stunned when he saw Lucky. Damn, how did you get here so quickly? Lucky was depressed. His problem wasn't a secret. The whole city knew about it, so how could he not know? However, being made fun of by his own brother and being mocked by his opponent were two different things. He immediately glared at him. It's none of your business. Who doesn't know that you're famous for being late? I thought I'd have to wipe out your guild 8 or 10 times before you understand what's going on. The person who was talking to Lucky wasn't an ordinary person either. He was the guild leader of Troubled Times Yang Kai. Coincidentally, both guild leaders were the first to arrive at the scene. They didn't abandon the glorious tradition of bickering between the two guilds. As soon as they saw each other, they would start bickering. Yang Kai was also aware of this. He didn't care about who started the fight first. With their relationship, it wasn't like he was expecting the other party to hand over the culprit. With his sleeves rolled up, he was already in PK mode the moment he entered the room. Lucky was a slow-witted person. One of the characteristics of slow-witted people was that they often didn't even know what was going on after being scolded. That was why Lucky didn't use his weak point to attack Yang Kai's strong point. He also started provoking Yang Kai. Since there aren't many people here, why don't we practice a little? Fuck you. Practice my ass. Yang Kai cursed. He was a thief, while Lucky was a warrior. In a small room like this, he was the perfect counter to a thief. Moreover, Lucky didn't seem to bring his slow-witted character into his PvP. He was famous for being a fierce PvP player in the main city. Of course, some people said that it was because he was slow that he didn't think about the consequences of his PvP. But no matter what, Yang Kai admitted that he couldn't compare to Lucky in PvP. Moreover, he was completely restricted by the conditions. If he agreed to a duel, he would only be asking for trouble. What, you don't dare? Then I'll randomly pick someone to fight with you. Alps, you go and practice with guild leader Yang. Lucky didn't come alone. He turned around and shook his head at the players behind him. Fuck, Lucky is late. Go die. Yang Kai looked over and saw that Lucky had chosen a warrior, Alps, who was their guild's #1 fighter. This was no different from Lucky personally coming down to fight. Fuck, you still don't dare? Do you want to find an archer to fight with you? Lucky said. That's great. Do you dare? Yang Kai said. Shameless Yang, you are really fucking shameless. Just like Ji Li's slow reaction, Yang Kai's shamelessness was also well known. Guild leader. Guild leader. Following the shouts from the left and right doors, the players from both sides had arrived. The tavern couldn't hold too many people, so there was already a queue outside. When they saw the guild badge of the players lining up at the other door, what else could they say? Curse. And so, from inside the tavern to outside, the guild leaders of both sides took the lead. Lining up to curse, bickering was a glorious tradition of these two guilds. Shameless Yang, do you dare to duel with me here? Lucky had found an entry point. He knew that if he said too much, he would be taken down because of his slowness. So he just stuck to a topic. This couldn't be wrong. Lucky is late, stop talking nonsense. If you want to duel, then why did you form a guild? Even if Yang Kai didn't dare, he wouldn't back down. They were all talk and no action, but neither side felt embarrassed because they had always been like this. Even though the guild leader had solemnly said that this time was different, and that an all-out war might break out, as soon as they met, they started cursing and retorting. Everyone was used to walking down the old path. But what made Lucky's guild depressed was that today's opponent kept talking about Weathered Frost's defeat in Cloud City. Weathered Frost had dropped 3 levels in one go in Cloud City. Everyone in the guild knew that. They would be embarrassed to say that it wasn't a crushing defeat. Why did such a failure have to happen right before the two sides were about to start a war of words? The two sides had always been evenly matched, but this time, because the other side had a vicious argument, the players in Lucky's guild felt that they were in trouble. Guild leader, do we kill or not? Someone started asking in the guild channel. From this, it could be seen that these two big guilds had always been talking and no action. The reason was that they had always been in a delicate state of balance. But now that Troubled Times had found a topic to talk about, he suddenly had the upper hand. The other side couldn't win, so they were indignant and wanted to take action. Everyone was at a disadvantage because of this topic. Guildmaster Lucky, who was in the tavern, was being scolded by the words, "Do you dare to duel me here?" Seeing so many players in the guild channel begging for a duel, he was a bit reluctant to leave. He rarely had the upper hand in a war of words. Guild leader, do we kill or not? Guild leader, do we kill or not? Guild leader, do we kill or not? Messages came one after another from the guild channel to private chat. Geely finally couldn't afford to delay any longer. He sent out a kill message and charged towards Yang Kai. Fuck, are you serious? Yang Kai was probably too engrossed in his character. He didn't think that their side would have the upper hand. This had broken the balance, so they could only digest it through battle. Kill. From the tavern to the outside, the two guilds instantly started fighting. On the streets, in the alleyways, the resentment that had been accumulating for a long time was released everywhere. So it's like this. 5 Knights, who had personally come to supervise the rumors, was patrolling the main city when he saw this scene. Isn't this perfect? Eternal, who was accompanying him, smiled. 5 Knights was startled. You've achieved your goal, right? Eternal said. All 30 main cities will be like this? 5 Knights was startled. That depends on the strength of the rumors and the relationship between the guilds in the main city. For example, the 2 guilds here, I've investigated them. They've been at odds for a long time, but they haven't really fought each other. It's clear that they're lacking a fuse to anger the entire guild. Now that they finally have one, it's what you're seeing now, Eternal said. Then can this become a citywide battle? 5 Knights asked. That depends on the relationship between the 2 guilds, Eternal said. Did you see it? I did. How is it? If it was any other time, I'd say it definitely will. But now that there's an efficient leveling method waiting for them, it's hard to say. Eternal said. If battles break out in all 30 main cities this time. No, there's no need for 30 main cities. If it's a full-scale battle, 15 main cities would be enough. Then, it's very possible for us to clear out the warehouse. 5 Knights said as he calculated. Then I'll have to congratulate you, Eternal said. Chapter 923. Let's hurry up and go to another city to take a look. 5 Knights was a little excited at this moment. If the perfect situation really happened, he wouldn't need to use any overpowered methods to clear out his inventory. As he thought about it, he pulled Eternal to another main city, while inquiring about the current situation in the other main cities. The reality of the situation disappointed 5 Knights. Other than the main city he had just left, the rumors in the other main cities didn't have any obvious effect for the time being. Eternal, who was listening to 5 Knights chatter, smiled and said, If you want to create this kind of chaos, then the rumors have to be targeted and purposeful. First understand the relationship between the guilds. Then find people who are willing to listen and speak to spread the rumors. 5 Knights smiled bitterly. It's not that I don't understand this, but we don't have all the resources we want. For some guilds, it's easy for us to spread the news, but for some guilds, our influence isn't that great. Then maintain patience. It will eventually blossom and bear fruit. Eternal patted 5 Knights. That's the only way. 5 Knights nodded. The spread of rumors was something that couldn't be clearly controlled, and the consequences of it were even more dependent on some accidental factors. 5 Knights waited left and right, and finally received some news that made him feel gratified. After the previous wave, in another main city, two guilds had a verbal argument and started fighting. No one noticed anything behind the scenes, because there wasn't much communication between the main cities. For something to happen in 30 main cities at the same time, it might seem like a strange coincidence from the big picture. But the problem was that for the players living in the main cities, no one had the vision to see the big picture. They could only see their surroundings. And at this time, the sudden emergence of a guild war wouldn't surprise anyone. Leveling efficiency was something that all players valued, so it wasn't strange for guilds to start fighting because of this. It was just that the biggest guilds in the main cities were fighting because of this. These guilds had backgrounds, allies, and friends. The flames of war continued to spread, and there was a trend of all the guild players in the city being dragged into the storm. 5 knights received reports from various places, and felt that the situation was getting more and more optimistic. At this time, there were already 4 main cities that had started fighting, and the trend was basically the same, which was getting more and more intense, sweeping through the entire city. If this goes on, we might even be able to destroy Yin Teng's teaching? Wu Yi muttered. Eternal didn't say anything. He felt that it would depend on the aura of the players. He didn't know much about this, so he couldn't judge. However, for a main city like Moonlit City, it was certain that the teaching efficiency of leveling methods would be affected after a chaotic battle broke out. However, how many places in the game were as fierce as Moonlit City? There didn't seem to be a single one. 5 knights anxiously waited and waited. Seeing that the number of main cities involved in battles had already reached 10, and he was getting closer and closer to his dream of 15 main cities, it was time to start teaching the efficiency leveling method. Yunting acted as if he didn't know what was happening in these main cities, and started on time according to their previous plan. As a result, even the flames of war that had spread throughout the city instantly stopped. As the time approached, the leaders of the major guilds in the major cities started texting each other at the same time. The efficiency leveling method is starting. Let's learn it first. No one objected to this proposal. As a result, the battle that had been raging just a second ago suddenly became quiet. The efficiency leveling method teaching in all the main cities started in an orderly manner. How could this be? 5 knights couldn't believe it when he received the report. The smooth development of the situation made him more and more optimistic. He felt that with such powerful players, there shouldn't be anything that could stop them apart from shutting down the game for maintenance, right? However, as soon as the efficiency leveling method went online, everyone immediately dispersed. It was as if the school bell had been rung. Their hatred isn't deep enough, Eternal said. It's just a small conflict. Although it can cause a huge storm, when something important happens, it's easy to put it aside. To put it simply, their hatred isn't deep enough. At most, they don't like each other, and then the rumors start a fight. It just so happens that one of them is in a bad mood, so they expand it. That's all. Fuck, they really have it easy. 5 knights, who had been looking forward to it for a day, was depressed. Actually, it's because of this special period, but you've seen the effect. They definitely won't forget what they hate. Eternal said. You're talking about overpowered? That's right. Don't relax, continue to let the players in the city talk about this topic. I think they probably don't even have the time to look at the forums right now. Let's create more arguments. Eternal said. The efficiency leveling method was in full swing. The organization of the studio was much more effective than what Gu Fei and the others had done. The people who were previously killing in the city all had selective amnesia. Even if they met someone in the leveling area, they wouldn't mention what happened in the past. Even if they met someone who had just killed them. It was obvious that in the hearts of the players, the efficiency leveling method was more important. This wasn't a question of fish or bear paw, but a question of rotten fish or bear paw. Was it difficult to choose? Of course, there were also people who thought that the efficiency leveling method was a rotten fish. For example, Weathered Frost. They who had experienced life and death in Cloud City, all felt that the efficiency leveling method was a rotten fish that ruined their plans. The rumors that were spreading around the city were all pointing out their weaknesses. No matter how people tried to change the topic to the guild, they were always the main characters. No matter how the rumors changed, their names wouldn't be erased. They would only be described more and more unbearable. For example, when they saw Qianli, they would get drunk and lose control of their bowels. Weathered Frost's anger fire. His mind wasn't on the efficiency leveling method at all. He treated it as a rotten fish. First, it was because he couldn't calm his OP fury. Second, he had already seen the efficiency leveling method in Moonlit Night City. He had already determined that this LV40 efficiency leveling method was useless to someone like him, who had the best equipment in the game. Because he had used his skills to increase his efficiency, he had already used his equipment to make up for it. There was only so much room for improvement in killing monsters. He had already stuffed it to the brim. If he learned another efficiency leveling method, then it would be a real fish or bear paw. He could only choose one. It was impossible to use both at the same time. Fuck. Weathered Frost didn't study. He paced back and forth in the leveling area, saying that he was maintaining order. At this moment, as he walked, he was thinking about the unbearable remarks that Troubled Times and his gang had made about him in Cloud City. The more he thought about it, the angrier he got. He wanted to immediately fly to Cloud City with 100,000 heavenly soldiers, drag Qianli and his gang out, hang them on the city tower, and beat them for 24 hours. Then he would throw them under the city gate and let the players step on them for 24 hours. Then, Weathered Frost. Just as Weathered Frost was fantasizing about the next step, someone called out to him. He turned around and saw their guild leader, Lucky. Lucky was also a top-tier player. His equipment wouldn't lose to Weathered Frost's, so the efficiency leveling method was meaningless to him. At this moment he had nothing to do. When he saw Weathered Frost stomping on the ground, he immediately walked over. "What's going on between you and Cloud City?" Lucky asked. Weathered Frost was really impressed by this brother of his. In hindsight, he felt that there was no limit to how shameless he could be. This matter was probably known by many people in the game, right? As the guild leader of the guild involved, he still didn't know much about it. Lucky knew that Weathered Frost had dropped a level, and that he had brought people out to seek revenge. However, this ridiculously slow guy only remembered to understand the details of the matter now. Nothing much. Anyways, I have to get back at them. Weathered Frost said. I can see that. Lucky said. Weathered Frost wasn't someone who couldn't keep his cool. He was very clear about this, but his actions today weren't calm at all. How did you get involved with that Qianli drunk? Lucky asked. This. Weathered Frost was a little embarrassed. The source of this matter was really embarrassing. He was actually greedy for the studio's rewards and ran off to become an assassin. But now that it had come to this, he had to say it. Weathered Frost could only explain everything. Very overpowered? Very overpowered? Lucky seemed to be thinking about something. After a while he asked, what does this have to do with the previous overpowered guild? Fuck, don't tell me you don't know? Very overpowered guild leader. The previous overpowered guild leader, Sword Demon. Now the parallel world's #1 player, Qianli Drunk, is also on their side. There's also Yutian Shinming, and Scathed in Battle, and Brother Yu. Have you heard of them? Just listen to their names. It's not enough to be overpowered, it has to be overpowered. Fuck. Weathered Frost said. So it's like that. Lucky scratched his head. I say, what have you been paying attention to all day? Very overpowered. Don't you know how famous they are? During the city war, their guild defended the city and won. Weathered Frost said. I've heard of them. Lucky said. Those people are really hard to deal with. Did you know? At first, we went with 30 or so players from the main cities. None of the players from those cities were weaker than me. But in the end, Weathered Frost said so much that he wanted to cry. Ingqi's studio sent so many of you to go against a guild? How big of a grudge is that? Lucky said. Big of a grudge. Listen to me slowly. These days he had been facing people who were just as bitter as him. Everyone could only suffer together, and there was no place for him to complain. Now that he had chatted with Lucky for a while, he instantly found someone to complain to. Suddenly he couldn't stop talking. Chapter 924. It wasn't easy for him to find someone to comfort him. In the faraway Cloud City, a group of people he hated had gathered together to watch this scene. Gu Fei was also there. It was a new day, and he had just logged in. After learning about all these changes, Gu Fei was filled with regret. He regretted bringing the efficient leveling method into the game. He discovered that he had broken the balance. Look, the players didn't even PK and went to learn this thing. How could this thing be valued so much? PK was the main theme of life. Why didn't anyone want to learn his advanced PK techniques? 10 cities have been in trouble. Brother Yu was explaining the major events of the day. I heard that the cause of the incident was because we took care of these guys in Cloud City, and they were ridiculed when they returned. Other than in the game, there were also discussions about this on the forums. Most of them were ridiculing them. With Brother Yu's many years of experience on the forums, there was definitely someone behind all of this. Ingqi? The answer was obvious. It can only be Ingqi. Brother Yu said. Did anyone frame us and say that it was our people who posted to mock us? Zhan Wuxiang asked. Not yet, but we can't rule out this possibility. Brother Yu said. Motherfucker, what does Ingqi want? What kind of hatred does he have? Does he really want to kill us all? Unscathed in Battle said. Haven't you been cursing Ingqi to go bankrupt these past few days? Brother Yu said. The problem is that they were the ones who provoked us first. Zhan Wuxiang hit the nail on the head. What do we do next? As Brother Yu said this, everyone in the room looked at a certain person. A certain someone swung the bottle and said. Next? They're learning the efficiency leveling method. We're learning it too. We're learning it? Where do we go to learn? Everyone was at a loss for a moment before they recovered and turned to look at Gu Fei. That's right. Yutian Shenming yelled. There's no reason for them to drink water while we, the diggers, have no water. Get lost, you're just a damn digger. Unscathed in Battle tossed Yutian Shenming aside and walked up to Gu Fei. Master Qianli, I don't need LV40 efficient leveling methods. I want to learn some LV50 leveling methods. Can you tell me when you have the time? Give me some pointers. Unscathed in Battle's cowardly behavior made Gu Fei feel both angry and amused. The others also looked at him expectantly. The experts in the room, from their equipment to their skills, could only be better than those who had gone through thick and thin. So in the same situation, the LV40 efficient leveling method was useless to them. The only difference was that those who had gone through thick and thin could only watch helplessly. These experts, on the other hand, had Gu Fei to rely on. He was the founder of the efficiency leveling method. Since everyone was so familiar with each other, Gu Fei couldn't refuse such a request. He shook his head helplessly. Where do you all want to level? A bunch of people fought to speak up. Gu Fei hurriedly emphasized the principle. The target must be humanoid, not crawling or floating elemental ghosts. I say, shouldn't we spread the LV40 efficient leveling method to more people in the guild first? Then we'll give you special treatment. The guild leader, Sword Demon, spoke up. When everyone heard this, they felt that it would be selfish of them to fight to be the first, so they didn't say anything. Sure, there's a new group of people in the guild. These people. Brother Yu didn't finish his sentence, but everyone understood what he was trying to say. It was very overpowered. It turned out that the 50 or so people who had been in prison, plus the group of brothers that Yin Zhongmu brought, were all tested and reliable brothers. Although according to Han family young master, recruiting people was just going through the motions, in the end, it wasn't a good idea to just go through thunder and rain. In the end, a group of people was still recruited. It was hard to say if there were any spies from other guilds or studios among them. Brother Yu's mentality was also very normal. The efficiency leveling method was a good thing, and 80% of people would want to keep it to themselves. It doesn't matter. I reckon that the studios will also popularize it here. Our guild will just take it as a step forward. Sword Demon said. If you're talking about Yin Teng, their popularizing plan doesn't include Cloud City. Han family young master suddenly said. Why? Everyone was puzzled, but very quickly, someone cleverly reacted. You want to leave a place for us to do our own business? Forget about doing business. Han family young master walked in front of Gu Fei. I say, how long have you been harming Cloud City? It's time for you to use your abilities to create some benefits for everyone. Whatever. Gu Fei didn't explain. He had never doubted his own actions. Harming others was all a misunderstanding. He had always thought so. You're buying people's hearts. Brother, Yu sighed. Count it as accumulating some good karma. Unscathed in battle drew a cross in front of his chest. Then I'll go now. Gu Fei packed up the weapons in his pocket, which was an eye-opener for the surrounding people. This pocket really had all kinds of weapons. Blades, swords, staves, staffs, daggers, and so on. Some of them were weapons and equipment from the game, while some of them were weapons that Gu Fei had gotten from nowhere. Most of them had never seen Gu Fei use them before, even though they had known each other for a long time. Let's go. Gu Fei saw that the weapons of the various classes were quite complete, and then left. He was familiar with Cloud City and knew where to develop the leveling area and where not. Once he left the city, he went to do research. What about the others? Of course, he had to do something. Although he didn't have to collect money this time, he still had to spread the news. It was easy for players all over the world to know about it through the forums, which could attract a lot of unnecessary trouble. Therefore, they spread the news in the main city in-game. For example, Unsworn Sword and the other guild leaders of the major guilds. One message was equivalent to informing thousands of people. For example, when Sword Without Oath first received the news, he was overjoyed, thinking that he was really intimate with 1,000 miles drunk, and that the other party had given him such a great reward. Only later did he realize that it was not specifically targeting him. On the streets of the main city, in the taverns, at the respawn point, there were already players running around telling each other about the news. Brother Qianli, aren't you making a big deal out of this? If everyone in the city knows about this, won't you be squeezed to death? Unsworn Sword sourly sent a message to Gu Fei. He hoped that he would be the only one to enjoy the benefits, but it seemed that it was impossible now. He still hoped that the other side would realize that his actions were a little inappropriate. Will they? Doesn't everyone in the other main cities know about it? Gu Fei replied. They're prepared, right? Unsworn Sword said. Then guild leader Unsworn, you should also prepare yourself. Gu Fei said. Unsworn Sword's cheeks streamed with tears, but he had no other choice. Right now, even if it was to ensure that Unhindered could level in peace, he had no choice but to stand out and contact the other guilds to maintain discipline. There were many guilds that Unsworn Sword really wanted to ostracize. However, when Unsworn Sword thought of the black-clothed figure behind the scenes, after a shudder, it finally took on the responsibility of organizing this citywide event in a fair and just manner. Cloud City immediately entered a state of celebration. Some people couldn't believe their ears. Drunk Qianli, that violent and ferocious guy, was actually doing charity? Buying people's hearts. He's buying people's hearts. That was what some people thought. But very quickly some people said, buying people's hearts? Does Qianli need to buy people's hearts when he's drunk? If he says go east, do you dare go west? Immediately, many people deeply agreed. Indeed, drunk Qianli didn't seem to need to buy people's hearts because he pretty much used force to forcefully conquer Cloud City. With Qianli around, there would be no PK. This sentence was irrefutable proof. Everyone was filled with uncertainty as they waited for that day to come. Some people even speculated whether this was some kind of scary plan. Would he use this opportunity to gather all the players in the city and kill them all? According to the news from the leveling area, someone saw drunk Qianli fighting monsters in the level 40 leveling area. He played around with a monster, but he didn't kill it. His methods were extremely perverted and cruel. Another person said that he approached Qianli with the belief that he would die and asked 2 questions. First, what are you doing here? Answer, researching efficiency leveling methods. Second, why didn't you kill me? Answer, scram. Gradually, drunk Qianli had more and more onlookers around him. They realized that they were onlookers, but they were still alive. Gradually, the players began to believe that drunk Qianli had really abandoned evil, and was going to create some benefits for everyone. Because in the process of being watched, Drunk Qianli even began to teach the onlookers how to learn. After walking through the level 40 leveling areas in Cloud Peak City, Gu Fei had already created his own strategies for each class. Following behind him was a large group of players, who took advantage of the opportunity to learn the efficient leveling methods. After that, there was no time to organize a unified teaching session. The players actually taught 10, and 10 taught 100 to learn from each other. The atmosphere in the leveling area was a mess. Unsworn Sword, who walked around the leveling area, could not believe his eyes. He couldn't believe that everyone was so harmonious. He could not understand it no matter how hard he thought about it. Finally, he heard a sentence somewhere and came to a realization. This is what Boss Qianli taught everyone to use for leveling. Why are you being so overbearing? Unsworn Sword understood. It was because of that name, because of that terrifying figure. This time, the efficiency leveling method was promoted by Drunk Qianli, so Drunk Qianli became everyone's backer. In this event led by Drunk Qianli, no one dared to cause trouble. Maybe some people didn't think so much, but once someone reminded them, they became obedient. The leveling area, which was originally the most contentious, seemed to have been cleaned up. The players were united and friendly, each guarding their own territory, not taking even half a step into the minefield. Stealing kills, stealing territory. These were things that happened hundreds of times in the leveling area every day, but suddenly, they all disappeared. Unsworn Sword finally understood that no matter how strong he could lead reigning 4 seas, in a place like Cloud City, the players had long been deeply convinced by one person. Whether it was because they were scared out of fear or something else. In short, the prestige of Drunk Qianli alone was greater than all of their guilds combined. Chapter 925. After suddenly realizing this, Unsworn Sword instantly felt a sense of despair. Why did he build a guild? Of course not for money. His goal was to become a character that could shake a major city with a stomp of his foot. Reigning the Sea's development went smoothly. From the beginning of the open beta, it was known as the largest guild in Cloud City. After that, many things happened. Their strongest competitor, Singing for Wine, collapsed. Black Alliance and Shepherd Cloud, which were both level 6 guilds, also declined. There was also Rosy Cloud. Unsworn Sword knew very well that Rosy Cloud's nature was different from theirs. Gu Xiaoshang, the guild leader, did not have the same ambition as him. Sword Demon, unscathed in battle, Yutian Shenming, Brother Yu. These resounding names appeared in Cloud City one after another. Unsworn Sword felt a lot of pressure. He knew that these people were all characters with good foundations. But in the end, Sword Demon failed to reform against the heavens, and became a lone soul. Yutian Shenming joined Unsworn Sword and became one of his underlings. Unscathed in battle joined a pure warrior guild. That kind of guild was destined to not have a bright future. Brother Yu maintained his style of being more famous in the forums than in the game. In Cloud City, he, the Sword of No Oath, was the true #1 person. He was very optimistic about his future, until a guy called 1,000 Miles Drunk appeared. As soon as this guy appeared, he gave Unsworn Sword a show of strength. Although at that time, Unsworn Sword still did not know who this person was, but after the non-smiler was slashed, he made a name for himself. Although Unsworn Sword took the opportunity to kick the non-smiler away, he still felt a ball of fire in his heart. Their guild launched Kill 27149, and chased his brother Reflected Years into a hole in the ground, unable to advance or retreat. This was like the prelude to a tragedy. From then on, Unsworn Sword never had the upper hand in any dealings with Qianli Drunk. In the beginning he gnashed his teeth and wanted revenge. Then he raised his vigilance and was constantly on guard. Then he chose to avoid him selectively, and finally, he tried to build a good relationship with him. Step by step, unknowingly, in front of Qianli, Unsworn Sword had already placed himself in the position of a subordinate. He couldn't accept it. He thought of fighting back, but he couldn't think of any way to do so. He always held on to the last strand of hope in his heart. He felt that he was still the guild leader of a big guild. As for 1,000 Miles Drunk, he was just a high-level fighter, and his reputation among the masses wasn't very good. This made Unsworn Sword feel that he was the embodiment of justice, that he was the one who would triumph over evil. At this moment, Unsworn Sword had no choice but to face his own childishness. So what if Qianli was evil when he was drunk? Justice will prevail? This was simply coaxing a child. Victory was justice. This was the truth. Moreover, Qianli drunk was not evil at all. This was something that Unsworn Sword, who paid close attention to Qianli drunk, knew better than most people. Although the players in Cloud City could vividly describe the brutality of Qianli drunk, if you really wanted to talk about Qianli drunk, would there be any? No. Not a single one. 1,000 Miles Drunk taught everyone the efficient leveling method for free. In an instant, everyone looked at him in a new light. Was it really just because of this little bit of benefit? Of course not. The root of the problem was that the so-called brutal image of Qianli drunk was just a rumor created by everyone. When it came to reality, everyone knew that Qianli drunk had never caused any trouble for anyone. Even if someone had been slashed by him, there was enough of a reason for it. A straight body does not fear a crooked shadow. That was all. As Unsworn Sword walked around the leveling area and listened to the players talking about Qianli drunk, he only felt disheartened. He understood that all his efforts in Cloud City could no longer help him reach his lofty ideal. He would forever be below others. Qianli drunk. Damn it, how could such a person exist? Unsworn Sword was in tears. Unsworn Sword continued walking until he was about to leave the level 40 leveling area. Suddenly, he saw a familiar figure in the outer world. It was the guy he had been cursing in his mind. Unsworn Sword subconsciously walked over to him. The level 40 leveling area was very peaceful. There was no need for him to pretend to be the leader of a big guild. He immediately lost interest. For him, the efficient leveling method was tasteless. After all, Unsworn Sword was a high-end player. As he gradually approached, Unsworn Sword saw drunk Qianli drunk hitting a boulder in front of him. This boulder wasn't a monster, nor was it a boss. Unsworn Sword couldn't think of any quests that required this kind of behavior. Seeing 1,000 Miles drunk madly hammering away at the boulder, he suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. Gu Fei also noticed someone behind him. He turned around and saw Unsworn Sword. He nodded and said, "Guild Master Unsworn." "Brother Qianli, what are you doing?" Unsworn Sword was confused. "It's bent. I'm hitting it to straighten it," Gu Fei said as he continued to hit the boulder. Unsworn Sword could not help but laugh. It seemed that it was true that this person was actually a noob. How could he make such a childish mistake? Unsworn Sword walked forward and taught this noob a lesson. Equipment will deform when its durability reaches a certain level. Even if you bring it back like this, it's useless. It should. When he said those two words, Unsworn Sword paused because he saw the thing in Gu Fei's hand. It was neither long nor short. Unsworn Sword did not dare to confirm what it was, but he was certain that it was not a piece of equipment. "What should I do?" Gu Fei asked. "It should be given to someone with strength to straighten it." Unsworn Sword wiped his sweat and reached out his hand. Gu Fei handed it over. Unsworn Sword took it and finally knew what it was. Jack's fire stick. Unsworn Sword's strength was not on the same level as Gu Fei's. With a bit of strength, the fire stick was straightened. Gu Fei, who was watching from the side, had tears streaming down his cheeks. However, he did not know that Unsworn Sword was also feeling the same way. 1,000 Miles drunk. What the hell is the most feared expert in the entire game doing here with a fire stick? Unsworn Sword handed the fire stick back and asked, "What quest is this?" It was a fire stick, after all. It was just a random fire stick. How could a wooden stick be so tough and not bend? Therefore, Unsworn Sword felt that this fire stick might have some background. "Quest?" Gu Fei asked curiously as he took back the fire stick. "Then what is this?" Unsworn Sword mimicked Gu Fei's action. "It's bent. I want to straighten it." Gu Fei felt that he had already said this. That's it. Unsworn Sword could not believe that there was no meaning to it. It was as simple as bending and straightening it. "What else do you want?" "What is this?" Unsworn Sword pointed at the fire stick. "I think it's some kind of quest. I forgot. I just saw that this thing doesn't break easily, and it fits well, so I kept it," Gu Fei said. It's not shown in the quest list? I deleted it a long time ago. Gu Fei said. Unsworn Sword almost fainted. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that this must be a very meaningful quest. A fire stick that could only bend but not break, how unusual. This damn noob, did he unknowingly delete a very important quest? Then why did you keep it? Unsworn Sword had to ask. Nothing much. I'll use it when I need it, Gu Fei said. Huh? Start a fire? Unsworn Sword asked tentatively. What fire? Gu Fei was speechless. He immediately showed Unsworn Sword 3 moves with the fire stick. Okay. Unsworn Sword squeezed out a word after a long time. This stick's length is about the same as a staff, so I took it out when I was making efficient leveling methods. If I used it too much, it would bend. Gu Fei explained. If he had equipment, then it would have stats, which would increase his damage. That way the monsters would die too quickly. For the sake of research, Gu Fei specially made this kind of thing that only had a shape but no stats. Unsworn Sword nodded his head, not really understanding. Then the two fell into a state of silence. The two of them weren't familiar with each other. Brother Qianli, if you have time, do you want to come play at Reigning the Four Seas? Unsworn Sword suddenly said. You guys are reigning the Four Seas? What's so fun about it? Gu Fei asked curiously. Unsworn Sword was instantly speechless. Were there any benefits to joining a guild in the game? Of course there were. Guild quests and guild contributions were a relatively stable way to obtain high-end equipment. Unlike farming equipment in the wild, which depended on luck, or buying equipment in the market, which depended on gold coins, joining a guild to obtain equipment was more important. As long as one was willing to pay the price, they would be able to obtain equipment. However, equipment, did Drunk Qianli need it? It seemed like he didn't. He could even use a broken fire stick without stats to fight monsters. Apart from this, guild players would also receive a certain amount of EXP when leveling. However, Drunk Qianli didn't seem to need it. He was now the #1 player in the parallel world, and he only played for a few hours a day. He didn't need the guild's benefits at all. After that, a powerful guild would be a powerful backer. Unsworn Sword cried when he thought of this. Drunk Qianli needed a backer? Wasn't that a joke? He hoped that Drunk Qianli would come and play, but it seemed like he was looking for a backer for the guild. As expected, there was no reason to poach him. Unsworn Sword stopped talking and laughed. I was just saying. Gu Fei didn't mind. Looking at his expression, he seemed to have received a message. Then he suddenly turned to Unsworn Sword. By the way, the leveling efficiency of the leveling area here isn't of any use to you, is it? Unsworn Sword suddenly became nervous. What did he mean by that? If he said it was useless, would he be regarded as despising it, and be killed to level 30 on the spot? Gu Fei was very clear about Unsworn Sword's answer. Without waiting for him to reply, he gestured in a certain direction and said, Come, follow me to the leveling area for leveling. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.